Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Alexandria Kostial. Alexandria Kostial. Born on September 11, 1997 in St. Louis, Missouri, Alexandria, commonly known as Ally, is the adorable daughter of Cindy and Keith and has an older brother named Andrew. Alexandria has a friendly and approachable personality. From a young age, Alexandria's bright smile and warm personality attracted people. As she grew up, Alexandria's positive energy spread a positive life to those around her. She spends time with her friends, classmates, and family members. Alexandria's ability to connect with people from all walks of life is truly remarkable. Alexandria is a charming and compassionate person who always helps those in need. She attended Lindbergh High School, where she developed her passion for athletics. During high school, Alexandria met her best friend, Maddie Norris, and they formed a close bond and friendship that grew into a deep and trusting sisterly bond. Alexandria and Maddie shared a passion for exploring life and trying new experiences. Together, they faced challenges, laughed, and made lasting memories. During their time together, they enjoyed afternoons spent watching movies. One of their favorite movies was Legally Blonde. Once Alexandria got her driver's license, she and Maddie often drove around town in Alexandria's convertible. As their senior year approached, Alexandria still had no date for the upcoming prom. Although a few guys had asked her out, she had never had a serious relationship or boyfriend. Feeling frustrated, she considered skipping the event. However, Maddie asked to be Alexandria's dance partner at the prom. Alexandria was deeply moved, and so Alexandria wore a beautiful red dress to the prom. After graduating from high school, Alexandria made her dream of attending the University of Mississippi in Oxford, Mississippi come true. She was drawn to the University of Mississippi, also known as Ole Miss, because of its large student body. An avid sports fan, she was especially impressed by the school's renowned football program. In 2006, Alexandria began her freshman year at Ole Miss, where she majored in marketing and business. While at Ole Miss, Alexandria joined a sorority and became one of its founding members. She is also president of the Ole Miss Golf Club. Alexandria, with a strong passion for sunsets, she took to taking pictures to capture their beauty, with the aim of sharing this beauty with the world. Alexandria created an Instagram account to showcase her beautiful sunset photos. One night, while at a bar in downtown Oxford, Alexandria met Brandon Theid, a charming young man from Fort Worth, Texas. She was immediately attracted to him and invited him to several sorority dances. Over time, Alexandria's feelings for Brandon grew. Born into a loving Christian family, Brandon had a fulfilling childhood, with his father being a prominent doctor in Fort Worth. Growing up, Brandon had a classic Texas childhood filled with activities like hunting, fishing, and soccer. Alexandria's love of the outdoors made him eager to participate in a variety of outdoor activities. During school breaks, Alexandria's best friend Maddie from St. Louis visited Alexandria in Oxford, Mississippi. According to Alexandria, Maddie was excited to see Brandon. However, during Maddie's time there, Brandon did not come to visit and see Alexandria's deceased best friend. This left her heartbroken. Maddie witnessed Alexandria's sadness and felt sorry for her friend. Despite her trauma, Alexandria remained strong and focused on her studies at Ole Mississippi. Alexandria had a great first year, with high grades, new friends, and a strong sense of humor. The summer of 2019, right before Alexandria's senior year, was a time of great anticipation for Alexandria and her parents, Cindy and Keith. They were all looking forward to her senior year at Ole Mississippi. Alexandria's parents decided to visit her at Oxford University for a few days. They were happy to see how quickly their daughter adjusted to her new surroundings. At the time, Alexandria was busy teaching a gym class and attending summer school. When her parents arrived, Alexandria gave them a tour of the campus, showing them her favorite spots in town. The visit gave her parents, Cindy and Keith, the opportunity to see firsthand how their daughter has grown and be proud of all she has accomplished. Cindy, her mother, cooks Alexandria's favorite dinner. During the meal, they shared fond memories. Alexandria's parents had originally planned to return home to St. Louis, but she asked them to stay an extra day so they could experience more of what Oxford had to offer. Cindy and Keith agreed to extend their stay. On July 19th, after returning home, her parents called Alexandria around 7 p.m. She answered the phone, still sleepy from her nap, and explained to her mother that she planned to go out with friends that evening. Cindy told her daughter that she loved Alexandria and hung up. Little did she know that would be the last time she would speak to her daughter. Sardis Lake is a large recreational area 30 minutes from Oxford that has many hunting camps. The area is large and is patrolled by the local police department for safety. On June 20, 2019, a police officer began patrolling Sardis Lake early in the morning. As the officer drove around the lake, he noticed near a picnic table the body of a young woman lying on the ground. The officer was shocked by the discovery and immediately called for help. Other officers and paramedics arrived on the scene a few minutes later. Upon arrival, the officer found a wallet in a nearby ditch. When the wallet was opened, it contained an Old Miss school ID and a driver's license identifying the owner as Alexandria Kostial. Later, after the discovery of Alexandria's body at Sardis Lake, the police had to notify her parents, Cindy and Keith. However, they were away from home in St. Louis at the time. Her mother was devastated when she heard the news about her daughter. The news of Alexandria's death shocked her friends as well as her parents. Alexandria's friends turned to social media, using the hashtag #JusticeForAllie to express their grief and demand justice for her. They share fond memories of Alexandria in social media posts, talking about the positive impact she had on their lives. And her friends sent their condolences to her family. Following the tragic death of Alexandria, we express our deepest condolences to the Alexandria family during this extremely difficult time. At the crime scene near Sardis Lake, police found White Claw water bottles and .40 caliber shell casings on the ground. A ballistics expert was called in to analyze the scene and piece together the events surrounding Alexandria's murder. The expert determined that the killer was initially sitting across from Alexandria on a picnic bench when they fired the first shots. However, after the first shot, the killer stood up and began walking around the table toward Alexandria, firing multiple shots as they approached. One bullet missed Alexandria and struck the wooden picnic table. While searching for evidence, police searched Alexandria's apartment but did not find her phone. However, they discovered that Alexandria's Apple Watch had some unexpected syncs with her text messages the night before she was killed. When they examined the messages, they discovered that Alexandria had been having lengthy conversations with Brandon Theid. The messages revealed that Alexandria and Brandon had planned to meet before she was killed. Police investigating Alexandria's murder contacted Brandon on Sunday morning to ask to meet at the police station. However, Brandon declined the invitation that day but agreed to meet the next day at 8:30 a.m. Monday. On Monday, Brandon failed to show up at the police station as scheduled, prompting police to trace his cell phone. Cell phone data showed that Brandon was traveling south on Interstate 55 toward Memphis, leading police to suspect that he was trying to flee. As a result, they issued an arrest warrant and alert for his vehicle, which was easily identifiable due to its unique license plate. 2 hours after the warrant was issued for Brandon, the Memphis Fugitive Task Force located his vehicle at a gas station. Brandon was found sitting in his vehicle at a gas pump, where task force agents arrested him and notified Mississippi police. When police searched Brandon's vehicle, they discovered a .40 caliber handgun. Brandon's clothing was also found to be covered in blood after he exited the vehicle. After his arrest and return to Mississippi, police began tracking Brandon in the days leading up to the Alexandria murders. On Saturday, July 20th, Brandon visited friends and went bowling. The next day, Brandon visited another friend, bringing a six-pack of beer and the same .40 caliber handgun found in his vehicle. The friend reported that they talked for a while, but when the friend woke up on Monday, Brandon was no longer there. Brandon's background check did not reveal any history of violence or altercations. Interviews with friends and family members of both Brandon and Alexandria provided detailed information about the couple's history. They met at a local bar in Oxford during their freshman year and initially began dating. However, their relationship declined during their sophomore year. Notably, Alexandria's loved ones noticed a change in her demeanor, as she seemed to be more invested in the relationship than Brandon. This imbalance led to tension between the two. Brandon eventually blocked Alexandria from contacting him because she frequently went out at night, drank, and then called him. A year after their breakup, Brandon and Alexandria got back together the summer before Alexandria's senior year. They decided to rekindle their relationship. However, the reunion did not last long. Brandon was eventually charged with Alexandria's murder, specifically premeditated murder, which carries the death penalty. When news of Brandon's arrest spread, it caused widespread shock and attracted intense media attention in Oxford. The community was caught up in speculation and rumors as people shared their theories about the case. Reporters descended on the town, seeking interviews with people close to Alexandria and Brandon. In September 2019, Brandon pleaded not guilty to murder. As police continued to gather evidence, they reviewed text messages exchanged between Brandon and Alexandria before her murder. The messages revealed that Alexandria was concerned that she might be pregnant in April 2019, 3 months before her death. On April 14th, Alexandria sent Brandon a photo of a home pregnancy test result. He made it clear that they would not keep the baby and suggested that they could buy abortion pills. Alexandria, however, did not want an abortion, and she thought that she would meet someone who would love her and her child. Despite this, Brandon was adamantly against having a child, telling Alexandria that it would ruin his life. Police also discovered surveillance footage that showed Alexandria leaving a bar in Oxford Square at around 11:45 p.m. on July 18th. About an hour later, at 1:30 a.m., Alexandria met Brandon and he drove them to Sardis Lake. Brandon's defense attorney claimed that he and Alexandria had been drinking throughout the day. At Sardis Lake, they sat at a picnic table and listened to music. Brandon then got up and walked to his truck, where he used drugs. He walked back to Alexandria, returned to his truck, and retrieved a .40 caliber gun. By the time Brandon retrieved his gun, there had been a shooting on the other side of the lake. After the incident, Brandon and Alexandria continued to talk, but the situation became heated, and Brandon shot her. According to the defense, Brandon's actions were influenced by the combined effects of drugs and alcohol. The police and Alexandria's family saw the incident from a different perspective. They believed that Brandon killed Alexandria because he suspected she was pregnant, which he believed would ruin his life. To them, the murder appeared premeditated. Brandon agreed to a plea deal with state police on August 27, 2021, avoiding the death penalty. Under the deal, Brandon admitted to first-degree murder and received a life sentence without parole. Alexandria's loved ones attended the hearing. Brandon addressed Alexandria's family after the sentencing, expressing remorse for his actions and asking for their forgiveness. He acknowledged the great pain he had caused and hoped they could find forgiveness in their hearts. Although Alexandria's autopsy report showed that she was not pregnant at the time of her death, her mother, Cindy, believes that Alexandria was pregnant and lost the baby. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Pam Hupp. Pam Hupp was born on October 20th, 1958 in Delwood, Missouri, as the second child to the Newman family. She married Mark Hupp, and they had 2 children together. In 2001, the family relocated to Fallon, Missouri. Pam had a varied work history, eventually working as administrator for State Farm until 2010 when she stopped working due to back and leg pain. During this time, she started filing disability claims. On August 16, 2016 around noon, Louis Gumpenberger, a mentally challenged man who had been struggling with mental and physical disabilities since a car crash in 2005, died after being shot 5 times by Pam Hupp in her apartment. Earlier that day, Pam called 911, reporting a robbery. According to Pam, Gumpenberger had jumped out of a vehicle driven by another person, attacked her with a knife while she was in her SUV, and she claimed she slapped the knife away with a karate chop. Pam said she then ran into her house, grabbed her Ruger LCR from the nightstand, and shot Gumpenberger 5 times in self-defense. She alleged that Gumpenberger ordered her to drive him to the bank to withdraw Russ's money, and claimed that Gumpenberger attacked her in her driveway. Russ was Russ Faria, a man wrongly convicted of murdering his wife Betsy in 2011. At the crime scene, the police found 9 $100 bills on Betsy's body, along with a handwritten note addressed to her. The note contained chilling instructions for the killer, detailing what they needed to do at Pam's apartment. Firstly, they had to retrieve Russ's money. Then they would take Pam into the house, kill her, and make it look like Russ's wife was responsible. The murderer wanted Pam's life to end in a specific way. They even specified that the knife should be left sticking out of her neck. They were willing to pay Gumpenberger a hefty sum of $10,000 for completing the task. Pam Hupp was arrested for murder. However, truth behind Gumpenberger's death emerged when Pam voluntarily visited O'Fallon police. During her interview, Pam asked if it be recorded, citing her TV appearances with KTVI's Chris Hayes, whom she blamed for attracting criminals. According to the Fallon chief of police and the prosecuting attorney of St. Charles County, Pam had lured Gumpenberger into her home by posing as a television producer named Kathy. She pretended this was for a TV show and tricked him into reenacting a 911 emergency call, providing a perfect cover for the horrific crime she was about to commit. After murdering Gumpenberger, Pam wrote a note that was later found on his body. The police were convinced that Pam was a ruthless killer due to the overwhelming evidence they discovered, including the $100 bills found on the deceased body. It was later revealed that Pam had planted these bills on Gumpenberger's body. Significantly, the 10th $100 bill was found in Pam's dresser, and its serial number was sequential with 3 of the other $100 bills found on the body. The St. Charles County Police subsequently reopened a complaint filed on August 10, 2016, by Carol Alford, who reported a woman matching Pam's description. This woman had approached Alford, offering to pay her $1,000 to participate in a fake 911 call, and was driving an SUV identical to Pam's. It emerged that Carol Alford was not the only one with a similar complaint. Brent Harleton informed the police that Pam had made him the same offer less than an hour before she shot Gumpenberger. Pam claimed in her interview that she had never met Gumpenberger before, but phone records showed that she had been at his doorstep. Further investigation revealed that Pam owned the knife she claimed Gumpenberger used to attack her, which she had purchased along with other items at a store in O'Fallon. It was also discovered that Pam had a habit of storing her knife between her kitchen counter and stove, similar to how the knife was found in her car, wedged between the passenger seat and central console. During a search of her home, police found a carpet swatch that seemed to be placed to protect her rug from Gumpenberger's blood. The police had doubts about Gumpenberger's ability to commit the crime due to his mental state. It became clear that Pam was guilty when she shot Gumpenberger, apparently trying to protect her rug from blood. On August 23, 2016, Pam Hupp was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. When she was arrested, she asked to use the restroom and then attempted to take her own life by stabbing her wrist and neck with a ballpoint pen. Fortunately, she failed. Pam made her first court appearance on January 30, 2017, where St. Charles County Assistant Prosecutor Phil Groenweg argued that her actions demonstrated a consciousness of guilt. Pam Hupp was convicted on all charges by a grand jury in December 2016 and was given a $2 million bail. Her trial began in 2017, during which she pleaded not guilty, prompting the prosecutor to seek the death penalty. They argued that she had made a decision to target Gumpenberger as her victim. In June 2019, Pam entered an Alford plea, effectively withdrawing her request for a jury trial and avoiding the death penalty. Following her guilty plea, she was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole in August 2019. After her sentencing, Pam called her then-husband, Matt Hupp, and admitted to killing Louis Gumpenberger to spare their family the ordeal of a distressing trial. The trial exposed a disturbing aspect of Pam's character, revealing a shocking truth that horrified the police, judges, and the entire nation. In June 2016, Judge Cunningham ruled that evidence related to the brutal murder of Betsy Faria could be presented in court, leading to the reopening of the Betsy Faria case. Betsy Faria, born Elizabeth K. Meyer Faria, resided in Troy, Missouri, where she worked alongside Pam at State Farm as a life insurance administrator. In 2010, Betsy was diagnosed with cancer, and by October 2011, she had discovered that it had spread to her liver, leaving her with only a few months to live. Prior to her death, on December 22, 2011, Betsy altered the sole beneficiary of her $150,000 life insurance policy, replacing her husband, Russ Faria, with Pam Hupp, without informing him or their daughters of the change. Pam later claimed that Betsy had instructed her to establish a trust fund for her daughters until they came of age. However, Pam subsequently alleged that Betsy had wanted her to keep the money for herself, citing a previously undisclosed romantic relationship between the two women before Betsy's death. Betsy's daughters became suspicious and took Pam to court in 2014, but their attempt to retrieve their mother's life insurance fund from Pam and her husband Matt was dismissed by the court. In 2016, Russ took legal action against State Farm. 5 days after Betsy made Pam Hupp the sole beneficiary of her life insurance policy on December 22, 2011, Betsy attended a chemotherapy session at the Alvin J. Siteman Cancer Center, which left her weakened. Afterwards, she went to her mother's house as planned, where Russ was supposed to pick her up or she would stay overnight. However, Pam Hupp unexpectedly arrived at Betsy's mother's house and offered to drive Betsy home, claiming she dropped her off around 7 p.m. Betsy's daughter later stated that her mother missed her call at approximately 7:21 p.m. By 9:40 p.m., Russ made an emergency call to 911, frantically reporting that his wife Betsy had taken her own life. Russ spent the evening at his friend Michael Corbin's house, watching movies from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Afterwards, he drove to Sardis Lake in St. Louis before heading back home. When Russ called for help, the first responders arrived about 10 minutes later. Upon examining the scene, they immediately ruled out the possibility of suicide. Betsy's body was found lying on her right side, with 55 stab wounds and a wrist cut to the bone. A kitchen knife was lodged in her neck, and another knife was discovered under her pillow. Notably, there were no bloodstains or footprints near the entrance of the house. The estimated time of Betsy's death was determined to be between 7:20 p.m. and 9:41 p.m. Fingers pointed to Russ Faria as the main suspect after his wife's murder. Authorities believed he had a motive due to being denied $150,000. Russ was arrested a day after the murder and charged with first-degree murder, despite claiming innocence. A pair of blood-stained slippers were found in his closet, and he failed a polygraph test. The police deemed his demeanor suspicious and erratic. Russ's bail was set at $250,000, which he couldn't pay, so he was jailed until his November 18th trial. Pam told police Russ was violent, a heavy drinker, and had threatened Betsy before. With a $150,000 motive, it was easy to suspect him. Russ's trial was an extremely challenging and brutal process. According to his lawyer Joel Schwartz, Russ maintained his innocence, stating that he was with friends on the night in question, and they corroborated his alibi. Furthermore, Russ had purchased food from a store, making it practically impossible for him to have committed the crime in question. The prosecutor countered that Russ's friends were in on it, lying about his whereabouts and maybe even helping him. The judge, Christina Menem, refused to let Schwartz present evidence pointing to an alternative suspect, Pam, despite strong evidence of her motive and suspicious behavior. She claimed to have put $100,000 from insurance into a trust fund for her sister's daughters, but later admitted to keeping it for herself. She didn't want others to have it, so she implied she wanted someone else to have it. A detective reported a crime scene camera malfunction, causing key photos to be lost. Despite the odds, Russ was convicted of murder and armed criminal action, sentenced to life plus 30 years. Before Russ's retrial, her lawyer obtained the photos showing no blood trail. He's still trying to find out who sent them to him. Betsy Pam's case took a welcome turn during re-examination. At trial, her sister Camp testified that Russ was devastated when his wife removed him from her insurance policy. Russ had pressed a pillow to Camp's face. Russ's friends were accused of being accessories to murder, but no charges were filed. After 4 years in prison, Russ's attorney appealed the conviction in 2015. However, a judge rejected a review of the case in 2013. In 2014, KTVI and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch reinvestigated the case, unveiling suspicious facts about Betsy's death and the killer's identity. Pam Hupp's alibi was discredited due to contradictory statements, and it was revealed she lied about not being in the Furia home. The fact that Pam was completely forgotten about in the murder case was not only shocking to Schwartz and Russ, but some members of the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department had also been confused as to why Pam was not being investigated as a possible suspect in the case. In an interview, an officer had shared how shocked he was when no one was looking in Pam's direction. Everyone had been fixated on Russ. Media exposed prosecuting attorney ASI's effort to imprison Russ, revealing her relationships with the captain of investigations Mike Lang and a lead investigator prosecuting witness. This led to a retrial in 2015 with a new judge, Christina Menem, initially presiding. After Menem's recusal, Judge Stephen R. granted a new bench trial and released Russ on bond. Schwartz presented evidence against Pam, revealing she told police she saw Russ with another man. CSI agent Amy Buhner believed Russ's blood-stained slippers were planted evidence. Russ was acquitted in 2015 and later sued ASI and deputies for ignoring exonerating evidence and fabricating their own. Russ was surprised by the speedy exoneration. Russ won a $2 million settlement in 2020. ASI faced a bar complaint from Joel Schwartz, but it was rejected in 2016. In 2017, ASI cooperated with the U.S. Attorney's review of Betsy Faria's case and asked for an independent probe into her conduct, but was cleared of any wrongdoing. Judge Christina Menem was suspended in 2017 for misconduct. She and ASI were later voted out for mishandling the Betsy Faria murder case. In 2019, Lincoln County appointed Mike Wood as the new attorney, who reopened the case, inspired by Russ Ferris's wrong conviction. After Pam Hupp's Alford plea, Wood requested a review by the major case squad. The case also motivated Rick Harold to run for Lincoln County Sheriff in 2020. Pam Hupp was questioned as a suspect in Betsy Faria's murder in July 2021. She was charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. The prosecutor sought the death penalty due to the brutal nature of the crime, which included 55 stab wounds and a severely cut wrist. Evidence against Pam included a $150,000 life insurance policy, which she claimed for herself despite promising to put it in a trust fund for Betsy's daughter. Pam Hupp claimed she and Betsy were lovers in 2021 and that Betsy wanted more than friendship. She betrayed Betsy, saying Betsy had a crush on her. Prosecutor Mike Wood thought Pam murdered Betsy, stabbing her 55 times with a kitchen knife while she slept. Pam then used her socks to spread footprints, trying to appear as domestic violence. Pam Hupp's case file linked her to Betsy Faria's murder. Despite claiming to be home by 7:20 p.m., Pam's call records showed she was still at Betsy's. Betsy's body position suggested she was killed by someone she trusted. Pam pleaded not guilty in 2022, but her trial was delayed due to her attorney's death. It's now set to begin in 2025 and last about a month. Prosecutor Mike Wood thought the case against Pam Hupp was mishandled from the start, with bias against Russ Faria in his second trial. A 2015 destruction order could have erased key evidence, luckily overlooked, ensuring Faria's release. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kaylee Mandotti. Kaylee Mandotti was born on August 20th, 1998, in Webster, Texas, to parents Tack Mandotti and Allison Steele. Her family enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle, with her mother working as a scientist and her father serving as an international executive director at MGM Resorts. Following her parents' divorce, Kaylee's mother, Allison, married NASA engineer Lawrence Buten, who resided in Houston. Although Kaylee's parents were separated, she maintained a close relationship with her father and regularly stayed in touch. Her stepfather, Lawrence, adored Kaylee and became a loving second father figure to her. Kaylee was an exceptional individual, cherished by her family and friends. She excelled as a student, team member, sister, and companion, spreading joy with her infectious laughter and kind heart. Throughout her academic career, Kaylee consistently demonstrated academic excellence and actively participated in extracurricular activities. Her diverse interests included horseback riding, piano playing, and theatrical performances. As a Girl Scout, Kaylee spent time exploring the Clear Lake neighborhood with friends and embarking on hikes with her parents. Upon graduating with honors from Clear Creek High School in League City, Texas, in 2016, Kaylee continued to pursue her passions. With a deep love for animals, Kaylee volunteered with a group called Animal Therapy. Her adventurous spirit drove her to seek out new experiences, and she aspired to try extreme sports and explore uncharted territories, always seeking thrilling experiences that brought her joy. At 19, Kaylee was a sophomore at Trinity University in San Antonio, studying communications. She was popular, with many friends, and led the cheerleading squad for the football team. Her beauty and charisma drew many admirers. During a football game, she met 22-year-old Mark Howerton, a tall, athletic professional baseball player. Initially, Kaylee didn't notice Mark, as she was interested in someone else, Jet. However, Mark was immediately smitten with Kaylee, captivated by her large black eyes and charm. Mark and Kaylee started dating in September 2017, despite their first 2 meetings not going well. Friends thought they were mismatched, as both were emotional and quick-tempered. Their relationship was marked by intense arguments and jealousy. Kaylee often had bruises and was afraid to retrieve her phone from Mark, a disturbing sign of the toxic relationship. The situation gets worse when Mark became aggressive, pulled out a gun, and threatened violence. Kaylee knew about her boyfriend's jealous nature and temper, but she would reassure her friends and ask them not to discuss their loud arguments publicly. However, on September 24, 2017, around 1 a.m., Kaylee's roommates had had enough and called the police due to loud noises and a man yelling and threatening violence coming from Kaylee's room. When the officer arrived, Mark was alone in the room, and Kaylee declined to press charges, downplaying the incident as just a lover's quarrel. Kaylee's friends suspected Mark of using controlled substances, which led to his angry outbursts. They recalled an incident where he threatened to throw Kaylee off a balcony and reported it to the police. Despite their tumultuous relationship, they was deeply in love during calm moments. On October 29th, they attended the Mala Luna Music Festival in San Antonio, a major event with gothic and industrial music. Mark and Kaylee were enjoying a fun time with their friends at a festival until Kaylee's ex-partner unexpectedly appeared, causing tension between Mark and Kaylee. They got into a big argument and left the festival early. Their friends didn't see them again that night. 6 hours later, Mark pulled up to a hospital in his black Mercedes, frantically seeking help. The medical staff found Kaylee unconscious and partially undressed in the front seat. The car was a mess, with her clothes scattered everywhere, and she was slumped forward, unresponsive. The hospital staff rushed Kaylee to the emergency room, where Mark revealed that they had taken illegal substances before the festival. This information helped doctors treat her for a possible overdose. Kaylee was then transferred to a specialized medical facility in Kyle, Texas, where a nurse with expertise in intimate assault cases examined her. The nurse found additional bruises on Kaylee's arms, legs, and ear. Further examination revealed that Kaylee had suffered blunt force trauma to the face and head, which ultimately led to her death. It became clear that Kaylee had been Kaylee of a fatal assault. Police launched an investigation into the death of Kaylee Mendotti, focusing on Mark as the primary suspect since he was the last person seen with her on the night of her death. During police interviews, Mark raised suspicions by repeatedly changing his story and omitting crucial details. Surveillance footage revealed that he and Kaylee had been to places that Mark had not mentioned in his account. As the investigation continued, it was discovered that Mark had a history of aggressive behavior towards Kaylee, according to her friends and family. One of her sisters even expressed fear of him. The police uncovered previous incidents of violence between they, including an instance where Mark hit Kaylee's head against a car window and vandalized her dorm room at Trinity University. When Kaylee's parents learned about Mark's history of abuse, they were devastated. Her mother, Allison Steele, filed a lawsuit against Trinity University, alleging that the school failed to protect her daughter from Mark's attacks. The lawsuit, filed in Becker County District Court, also named Mark as a defendant, claiming that he killed Kaylee in a jealous rage. The lawsuit claims that Mark Howerton assaulted 19-year-old Kaylee Mendotti, resulting in her death. It also alleges that Trinity University staff, administrators, and campus police were aware of Howerton's violent behavior and threats to harm Kaylee, including physical harm and breaking her face. Despite this knowledge, the university failed to take action to protect Kaylee in the weeks leading up to her death. A Trinity University spokesperson declined to comment on the lawsuit, citing the ongoing legal process. The lawsuit states that the university's inaction, despite numerous reports of harassment, intimidation, domestic violence, and gender discrimination, led to Kaylee's tragic death. The lawsuit argues that if Trinity University had intervened as it should have, Kaylee's death could have been prevented. The university failed to follow its own policy on investigating and responding to potential cases of relationship violence and harassment. After an incident in his dorm room, Mark was banned from campus for a year due to a criminal trespass order. Despite this, he continued to violate the order. Furthermore, detectives uncovered numerous accounts of Mark's violent behavior towards Kaylee during their relationship. One of Kaylee's sisters reported that Mark threatened to throw Kaylee off a balcony during an argument. Another sister claimed that Mark threatened to shoot some of Kaylee's ex-boyfriend's brothers with a gun. Based on these allegations, the police issued a warrant for Mark's arrest in February 2018. He turned himself in to the authorities. Following the discovery of Kaylee's disarrayed room at the university, Mark faced multiple charges, including criminal acts, intimate violence, and abduction. However, he pleaded not guilty to all charges. The first trial regarding Kaylee's death began in December 2019. Prosecutors argued that Mark, known for his volatile temperament, fatally assaulted Kaylee in a fit of rage. They claimed that he drove her around for nearly 6 hours before taking her to the hospital. In his defense, Mark's lawyers suggested that Kaylee's death could be attributed to various factors, including the presence of banned substances in her system, which may have caused a spike in blood pressure or head trauma during intimate activity. Kaylee's mother described the injuries on her daughter's body as severe, comparable to those from a plane crash. The injuries were indeed extensive, as evident from photos shown to the Bayhart County jurors. The images depict Kaylee, a sophomore at Trinity University from San Antonio, Texas, with severe bruises, red marks and scratches all over her body, from head to toe. Both her eyelids were swollen and bruised. Only her back and the back of her legs showed no signs of injury. Dr. Susanna Dana, the forensic pathologist who conducted Kaylee Mandotti's autopsy, took graphics and photographs that revealed a subdural hematoma on the right side of Kaylee's brain. This type of injury is typically associated with traumatic brain damage. Kaylee's father, Tilak Kaylee, became emotional after seeing 2 photos of his daughter in the ICU, where she lay in a vegetative state, surrounded by numerous tubes, with her face barely visible. Dr. Susanna Dana testified about the severe head and facial injuries she found on Kaylee. These injuries included a dent in her skull, eye trauma, and extensive bruising on her jaws, mouth, gums, lips, and cheeks. There were also hemorrhages in both eyes. Dr. Dana concluded that Kaylee's death was caused by head and facial trauma from a blunt object. However, Dr. William Anderson disagreed with this conclusion after reviewing the autopsy results. He pointed out that there were no fractures in the eye sockets, nose, or face, which suggested that Kaylee was not attacked from the front. Instead, Dr. Anderson believed that Kaylee's injuries were more consistent with a fall and subsequent medical treatment. Defense attorney John Hunter presented an alternative explanation, arguing that the prosecution lacked sufficient evidence to determine what happened to Kaylee Mandotti the night of the incident, making it impossible to prove Mark Howerton's involvement. During the trial, Hunter frequently highlighted Kaylee's history of drug use, including her treatment for substance dependence at a hospital. Professor Jason Wallach from the University of Sciences in Philadelphia testified that Kaylee had a high level of MDMA, ecstasy, or Molly, in her blood when her boyfriend took her to the hospital on October 29, 2017. The presence of this substance can turn a minor head injury fatal. Hunter stated that MDMA affects people differently, causing increased body temperature or electrolyte imbalances that can lead to loss of consciousness. Mark Howerton told investigators that he and Kaylee had an argument and engaged in consensual rough intimacy before she lost consciousness, but the origin and timing of her bruises remained unexplained. In December 2019, Allison believed Mark Howerton would be found responsible for her daughter's death. However, the trial ended in a mistrial due to the jury's inability to reach a verdict. Mark's defense claimed Kaylee's injuries were caused by hospital staff, leading to the hung jury in the 144th District Court, presided over by Judge Raymond Angeline. Because the jury was unable to reach a verdict, the case was dismissed, and Mark was acquitted of the charges in the first trial, leaving the case unresolved. District Attorney Joe Gonzalez, who had been handling the case from the beginning, expressed disappointment with the outcome and stated that he would review the case again. During this time, Kaylee's parents, Allison and Lawrence, began their own investigation. They gathered evidence and autopsy reports from the police and focused on a small, round bruise near their daughter's ear. They speculated that Mark might have hit her head against the car window, causing her to hit the door lock and get bruised. They hoped this new information would establish Mark's guilt. Lawrence found a similar Mercedes to Mark's and recreated the incident with photos. With the Texas Rangers' help, Lawrence got records and affidavits for an arrest warrant for assault and mischief. The records provided a detailed timeline of events leading up to Kaylee's death and evidence found during the investigation. The authorities exposed Mark Howerton's alleged deception to the Rangers and revealed the evidence that resulted in his arrest. Prosecutors described Howerton as a controlling boyfriend who constantly called Kaylee Mandotti, took away her phone, and isolated her from friends. 2 weeks before Kaylee's death, Howerton physically assaulted her, pushing her against a brick wall and trashing her dorm room. After the incident, Kaylee asked for space, but Howerton responded with dozens of messages, including a threat to end his life. Kaylee pleaded with him not to harm himself. That evening, Howerton called Kaylee around 200 times. Later, they attended a festival where they argued over Kaylee's ex-boyfriend. Mark Howerton took Kaylee from the festival, drove her to a deserted parking lot near the Whataburger headquarters, and spent over an hour there, according to GPS camera records. Prosecutors believe that it was in this parking lot where Mark Howerton attacked and killed Kaylee Mandotti. Kaylee Mandotti's family expressed gratitude to the Texas Rangers for their diligent efforts in securing suitable criminal charges against Kaylee's alleged attacker. Mark Howerton's pretrial began in June 2023. During the trial, the prosecution initially considered presenting a video recorded by Kaylee's parents in the hospital that showed her injuries, but ultimately decided not to use it. The prosecution took into account evidence gathered with the assistance of the Texas Rangers, despite potential complications and new disputes. Mark Howerton was found guilty of aggravated assault resulting in bodily harm that led to a lethal outcome. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, a fine of $110,000, and ordered to pay restitution to Kaylee Mandotti's family. Furthermore, he was prohibited from contacting over 20 individuals connected to the case. Now over 30 years old, Mark is serving his sentence in the Wilkes County Jail and will be eligible for parole in 2033. The conviction brought some closure to Kaylee's family, but felt the sentence was not enough for their loss. In the second trial, Mark Howerton faced additional charges, including aggravated assault and criminally negligent homicide, on top of the initial manslaughter charge. The prosecution changed its strategy to build a stronger case against him. However, Kaylee's family and prosecutors were unhappy with the outcome and pushed for a retrial. Kaylee Mandotti's tragic story shows the devastating effects of violence on a young life and her family's struggle for justice. Kaylee's story is a powerful reminder of the consequences of violence against young people with promising futures. Despite the conviction, her family believes the verdict does not bring justice for their daughter. In 2021, Allison filed a civil lawsuit against Trinity University, alleging negligence in protecting her daughter. She claimed the university failed to inform Kaylee's guardians about Mark Howerton's destructive behavior in her dorm room and took no action against him, allowing him continued access to her daughter. It is unclear whether evidence collected by Allison and Lawrence was presented during Mark Howerton's trial. However, in 2023, he was found guilty of aggravated assault causing bodily harm, despite being acquitted of the more serious charge. Prosecutors noted that Kaylee's family was satisfied with the verdict, as it brought an end to the prolonged legal proceedings. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Ilana Frick. Ilana Christina Frick was born in September 1977 in Windsor, Ontario, to George and Anna, who had immigrated to Canada from Croatia in the early 1970s. She was the younger of two daughters, with an older sister named Caroline, with whom she was extremely close. Ilana's birth was considered a miracle by her parents. Her mother, Anna, had faced serious health complications after her first pregnancy, and doctors had told them that Anna would likely never conceive again. Anna and George made a significant effort to ensure their daughter's well-being and meet their needs, in spite of the difficulties they faced. They both worked at a car factory, striving to give Alana and Caroline a good education and a comfortable life. Growing up, Alana was a diligent and passionate student. She spent most of her free time reading, also found time to attend dance classes, practice gymnastics, and compete in track and field events. During her summer breaks, Alana chose to work to help support her family, often working in cornfields and learning to manage her finances wisely. As she progressed through school, Alana excelled in math and science, and by the time she reached high school, she had set her sights on a career in medicine. Alana graduated at the top of her high school class and was accepted into a prestigious medical university. Around the same time, she started dating Matthew Ryan, a classmate from high school who was also studying in the same department. They maintained a long-distance relationship after graduation, with Alana moving to Ottawa to pursue a residency program at the university. Matthew, on the other hand, chose to work at a local hospital and did not pursue further education. Despite the distance, Alana and Matthew's relationship continued until nearly 2002. They had even made plans to get married, but ultimately decided to remain friends. By then, Alana was interning at a top clinic and was working towards earning a doctorate, while Matthew's career had not advanced. In February 2003, during a night shift at the hospital, Alana met Mohammed Shamji, a new colleague. She was immediately drawn to him. Mohammed, who was just a year older than Alana, was a resident in the neurosurgery department and came from a family of prominent doctors. Mohammed Shamji was born and raised in Ottawa, Ontario, into a family of medical professionals. His father, Fareed Shamji, was a well-known surgeon, and his mother, Edith, was a talented psychiatrist. Mohammed's older brother, Ali, also pursued a career in medicine, becoming a medical biophysicist. Both brothers attended Yale University, and later, Mohammed returned to Canada to earn his doctoral degree from the University of Western Ontario. Additionally, Mohammed had taken an interest in a blonde woman, but at first, he did not make any attempts to approach her. Alana was immediately drawn to Mohammed, a tall, dark-skinned man, and sought to capture his attention. He eventually asked for her number and initiated contact, marking the beginning of their romance. Initially, Alana perceived Mohammed as a reserved individual who hesitated on dates, jumped between topics, or fell silent, giving the impression of being introverted. However, it was later discovered that his behavior was not due to shyness but rather a lack of interest. Unbeknownst to Alana, Mohammed was seeing another woman at the time and intentionally kept this a secret. When Alana discovered she had a rival, she became resolute in her determination to be the only woman in his life. The first year of their relationship was tumultuous, with they breaking up on 3 separate occasions, rekindling. This was largely due to Alana's persistence in pursuing the relationship. Despite her parents' awareness of the issues and their encouragement to leave Mohammed, Alana remained resolute, convinced that she had found her soulmate. Alana often showered Mohammed with gifts, surprises, and home-cooked meals, but he only sporadically reciprocated her affection. Mohammed seemed content to accept Alana's displays of love without feeling obligated to return them. This dynamic created an emotional imbalance, where Alana grew increasingly dependent on Mohammed. In the summer of 2004, Alana and Mohammed received unexpected news: Alana unplanned pregnancy. A sudden life-changing event forced them to rethink their future plans. While both were anxious about the news, Mohammed felt a strong obligation to marry Alana before the baby was born, as is traditional in his conservative Muslim upbringing. In September 2004, they had a 2-part wedding. The first ceremony adhered to Mohammed's family's cultural customs, while the second was a more casual celebration with friends at a popular restaurant. At the time, the newlyweds seemed happy and in love. However, their happiness was short-lived. When their daughter, Yasmin, was born in January 2005, their marital problems became apparent. Muhammad's focus on his career and education left Alana and their newborn daughter feeling neglected. To make matters worse, Muhammad had been hoping for a son and wasn't afraid to express his disappointment. This marked the beginning of a troubled marriage that would ultimately end in tragedy. After having her child, Alana took maternity leave to care for her daughter and manage the household. When Muhammad returned home, he would often go straight to his room and spend very little time with his wife and children, which left Alana feeling abandoned and unappreciated. As time passed, Muhammad's behavior worsened, and he became increasingly critical and abusive. He would insult Alana's appearance, refuse to eat her cooking, berating and insulting his wife. Despite her growing unhappiness, Alana chose not to confide in anyone, including her close friends and parents, about her marital problems. However, one day, while Alana was on the phone with her mother, Muhammad returned home in a bad mood and began berating Alana in front of her mother. Alana's mother tried to defend her, but Muhammad shifted the blame onto Alana, claiming she was responsible for their troubled marriage. Alana's mother advised her to end the relationship with Muhammad and file for divorce, but Alana declined, hoping that she could still salvage the marriage. Unfortunately, Muhammad's actions worsened, and he started physically harming Alana on top of the verbal abuse she had already been enduring. The situation reached a boiling point in the summer of 2005 when Muhammad punched Alana in the face, breaking her nose. Fearing for her safety and that of her child, Alana fled to friends and reported the incident to the police, finally deciding to end the marriage and leave Muhammad for good. Muhammad surprisingly begged his wife, Alana, to come back, vowing to never physically abuse her again or even raise his voice. He promised that their family life would be perfect and he would control his temper. However, Muhammad's sudden change of heart was motivated by self-interest. As a young neurosurgeon, he was about to start at Duke University, working towards his doctorate, and a criminal conviction would ruin his promising medical career. Muhammad's primary concern was his own future, but he successfully convinced Alana to drop the charges against him. She even agreed to follow him to North Carolina, where he would pursue his studies. Alana's loved ones were confused when she didn't leave her husband despite the difficulties she was facing. Instead, she moved to another country with Muhammad. When they encouraged her to reconsider, she stood her ground. When the family settled in the U.S., life appeared more tranquil for a time. Muhammad earned a highly competitive spot in an elite engineering program. Meanwhile, Alana joined Duke University on a full tuition scholarship. Their relationship grew stronger and became more confident in their decision to have more children. After the arrival of their daughter Fiza, they welcomed another child. Unlike their son's relatively smooth birth, Fiza's delivery was more challenging. The new addition to the family brought immense joy, and they felt grateful for their family growing closer. What secrets lay hidden behind the perfect facade of this family? In the late summer of 2009, Alana and her husband, along with their children, returned to Ottawa, Canada, and settled back into their home. Alana, however, soon ended her maternity leave and secured a job as a family doctor at a renowned hospital, quickly building a solid reputation. Her husband, meanwhile, juggled work, studies, and teaching at a university. As social media gained popularity in the late 2000s, they started a personal blog that portrayed them as an ideal family. They shared photos of their vacations, accomplishments in science, and luxury lifestyle, complete with a lavish home. They even posted about attending prestigious conferences and trendy resorts. To outsiders, they seemed like a happy, successful, wealthy, and deeply in love couple with no problems. However, this perfect image hid a dark reality. Behind closed doors, Muhammad continued to exert strict control over Alana. He monitored her interactions, dictated what she wore, and even checked her email and social media accounts. He openly criticized her appearance, style, and parenting methods, leaving Alana feeling silent and trapped. As time passed, the tension and aggression between them become stressed, with Muhammad frequently yelling at Alana and blaming her for their arguments and discord. In 2011, a prestigious medical center in Calgary offered a talented neurosurgeon, Muhammad, a fellowship in spinal surgery. Muhammad accepted the offer and relocated to Calgary, but he had to leave his family in Ottawa because his wife, Alana, couldn't take a leave of absence from her job for over a year. They had to manage a long-distance relationship. During one of Muhammad's visits home, their relationship faced its biggest challenge yet. While at home, Muhammad accidentally left his laptop open, and Alana saw a message from another woman on his social media account. The content of the message implied a romantic involvement. When Alana confronted Muhammad, he confessed to having an affair, which was a devastating blow to Alana. Alana's family believed that this was the final straw, and they were convinced that she wouldn't forgive Muhammad again. However, Alana decided to give their marriage another chance. Muhammad promised to end the affair, and they decided to start fresh in Toronto, where Muhammad had secured a high-paying job. Despite this fresh start, their marital issues persisted. After their move to Toronto, Muhammad expressed his desire to have a son, and Alana agreed to try again, hoping that a new child would bring stability to their family. In October 2013, they had a son named Marius, a long-awaited addition to their family. Despite the new baby, his behavior towards his wife remained unchanged. Over the next few years, he devoted himself to his medical career, becoming a skilled and respected neurosurgeon known for his ability to tackle complex cases that other doctors avoided. Meanwhile, the wife also advanced in her career, becoming a representative for the Ontario Medical Association. However, the tension between them began to escalate, and his behavior towards his wife became increasingly aggressive. He went beyond verbal abuse, resorting to physical violence against her. During a family ski trip, the wife suffered a deep cut on her arm that required stitches, as well as other injuries. She initially claimed that the injuries were a result of a skiing accident. However, she later confided in her best friend that the injuries were actually inflicted by her husband. Following another heated argument over his latest infidelity, Alana discovered that her husband, Muhammad, was having an affair with a colleague. After overhearing a suspicious phone conversation, Alana confronted him, which led to a violent outburst, and he physically abused her. A friend, who was aware of the situation, advised Alana to end her marriage, but she refused. Her friend jokingly suggested that Alana should retaliate by having an affair of her own. Although the suggestion was made in jest, Alana might have considered it a viable option to get back at her unfaithful husband. During the summer of 2016, their relationship continued to deteriorate. Their children were away at camp or staying with their grandparents, leaving Alana and Muhammad to face their marital problems alone. In a surprising turn of events, they celebrated their 12th wedding anniversary in early September, even sharing the news on social media. However, their happiness was short-lived, as they began discussing divorce just a week later. Despite his marital transgressions, Muhammad refused to acknowledge his actions as grounds for divorce, claiming that he was happy with his current situation. On the other hand, a desperate Alana initiated an affair with a coworker who had been flirting with her, escalating their relationship turmoil. Elena found herself swept up in a new romance, feeling cherished and adored by her partner. This was a welcome change from her current situation, and she reveled in the long-absent sensation of being loved and desired. However, her personal life was about to take a dramatic turn. A fierce argument erupted in the family on November 25, 2016. Elena informed her husband that their divorce was unavoidable. The following day, she consulted with a divorce attorney and then departed for a 3-day medical conference in another city. While Elena was away, her husband, Muhammad, sent her a series of messages, begging her to reconsider and work on saving their marriage for the sake of their children. Elena returned home on November 30th and made a final phone call to her parents. Although her voice betrayed some anxiety, she reassured them that everything was okay. Unbeknownst to her family, Elena had attempted to call the police that evening, but in her distress, she accidentally misdialed the number, leading to a devastating outcome. On December 1st, Anna tried to contact her daughter Ilana but was unable to reach her. Concerned, Anna called her son-in-law Muhammad to ask what was wrong. Muhammad claimed that Ilana had packed her bags in the middle of the night and left him and their children to be with her lover. However, Anna and her husband were skeptical of Muhammad's story, knowing that their daughter would never abandon her children. They asked a close friend of Ilana's to keep an eye on the Muhammad home while they traveled to Toronto to report Ilana's disappearance to the police. The friend reported that Ilana's car was still parked in the driveway, which only added to the family's concern. When Anna and her husband arrived at their daughter's house, they didn't notice anything out of the ordinary at first. However, Muhammad was agitated and insisted that Ilana was with her lover, repeating the same story he had told the police earlier. After Ilana was reported missing, a shocking discovery was made. The police found a body inside a suitcase. A man walking his dog by the river on December 2nd noticed a new-looking suitcase under a bridge about 24 miles from the suspect Muhammad's home. His curiosity got the best of him, so he opened the suitcase, discovering the body of a blonde woman. The police were immediately notified, and the body was taken to the medical examiner for identification and analysis. Fortunately, identifying the owner of the suitcase was not difficult because the perpetrator had left the luggage tag attached, which still had her name and travel information from her recent trip. Her parents confirmed the identity as Ilana. An autopsy revealed her cause of death to be mechanical asphyxiation and a broken neck. Additionally, her body showed signs of abuse with multiple bruises and abrasions. Notably, the victim was found dressed in pajamas with no shoes. Considering the victim's position in clothes, it appears she was placed inside the suitcase immediately after her death. The investigation led to the suspect's arrest later that evening at a coffee shop. Evidence indicated he was planning to leave the country. A lawyer accompanied the suspect during his meeting at the time of arrest. However, law enforcement thwarted the escape. Subsequently, Muhammad, the prime witness turned suspect, was arrested, formally charging him with Ilana's first-degree murder. Muhammad denied any involvement in the incident, but a disturbing detail soon came to light. Their 12-year-old daughter, Yasmin, had unintentionally witnessed her mother's murder. Yasmin reported hearing screams and noise coming from her parents' room, prompting her to rush there. She opened the door slightly and saw her father kneeling behind the bed, while her mother was likely on the floor, out of her sight. Muhammad ordered Yasmin to leave the room immediately, shut the door, and go back to bed. The next morning, he told his daughters that their mother had left. Despite her young age, Yasmin sensed that something terrible had occurred, but she couldn't fathom that her father was responsible for her mother's death. To avoid putting his daughter through the trauma of testifying in court, the accused confessed to the crime. He recounted the events of that fateful evening, stating that he and his wife had argued over her alleged infidelity and desire for a divorce. Muhammad claimed that he didn't intend to harm his wife, but the situation escalated rapidly. The argument turned violent, and when his wife tried to call the police, he knocked the phone out of her hand. She began screaming, and Muhammad struck her multiple times in the face before pinning her to the floor and strangling her with his hands. Muhammad's daughter entered the room, but couldn't see what had happened behind the bed. By the time Muhammad realized his wife was not breathing, it was too late. In a desperate attempt to revive her, he made a fatal mistake, breaking her neck. Panicked, he placed her body in a large suitcase and drove around for hours, unsure of what to do. Eventually, he stopped at a small bridge over a river and threw the suitcase into the water, hoping the current would carry it away. However, the suitcase got stuck against the bridge's foundation, hidden in the darkness. During the trial of the surgeon, a scandal emerged involving his father, Frayed. The elderly man made derogatory comments about his deceased daughter-in-law, trying to justify his son's actions by claiming she had been unfaithful and provoked him. As a result, his medical license was revoked. Muhammad was found guilty of second-degree murder in April 2019 and sentenced to life imprisonment. However, he may be eligible for parole in 14 years, considering the time he served during the trial. This means he could be released as early as 2030. Additionally, Muhammad was prohibited from contacting his children or his wife's parents and was ordered to pay them a substantial amount of compensation. His medical license was also permanently revoked, preventing him from practicing medicine or teaching again. The children who have lost their parents are now being cared for by Ilana's parents. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Agnes Klavina. Agnes Klavina was born on July 8, 1984, in Riga, the capital of Latvia. She grew up in a typical family with her parents and older sister, Greta. They sisters were extremely close, with only a couple of years between them. Their parents worked hard to provide them with a good education and support their dreams. Agnes was a lively and outgoing young girl who excelled in school, enjoyed sports, and had many friends. Her dream was to pursue a career in tourism or entertainment, as she loved to travel and was skilled at organizing fun leisure activities. Her bright personality and attractive appearance also drew attention from men, who frequently complimented her. From a young age, Agnes had many admirers vying for her attention. After completing her education, Agnes worked in the service industry while taking language courses and studying to become a tourism manager. At 20, she decided to leave her hometown in Latvia and move to London, seeking greater opportunities to develop her skills and talents. Her parents and older sister supported her decision, and soon after her move, Agnes met Michael Mills, a successful businessman 8 years her senior. He was well-educated, owned a thriving business, and had recently opened a movie theater and entertainment complex. Agnes and Michael quickly connected and started dating. He showered her with attention, gifts, and luxury travel. They made ambitious plans for their future together, and their love seemed destined to last. Agnes's friends and family remember this as her first true love. She radiated happiness beside Michael and envisioned a future as his wife. In 2014, Agnes received a 3-month contract as an administrator at a popular nightclub in Marbella, Spain. This opportunity required her to temporarily relocate, but she was eager to take on the challenge. Michael, unable to leave his life behind, supported her decision to sign the contract. For Agnes, this was a chance to gain valuable experience and potentially launch a new career path. Marbella, a renowned resort on the Mediterranean coast, attracts vacationers from around the world, particularly the wealthy. It's not uncommon to spot celebrities, athletes, and business leaders in the area. Klavina, being a sociable person, enjoyed working in such a vibrant environment. Before relocating, she visited her family in Latvia and shared the news of her 3-month employment contract. She also announced her plans to marry Michael upon her return to England. Her family was thrilled for Agnes and wished her well. In May 2014, Agnes packed lightly and moved to Spain for the season, while Michael remained in London. They stayed in touch through daily phone calls and video chats, sharing updates about their lives. Agnes was active on social media, posting daily updates, photos, and videos, which drew a large following interested in her life and work. Agnes had a vibrant and busy life, making the most of every day. After her employment contract ended, she decided to stay in Spain for a couple of months. The resort was entering its peak season, and she saw an opportunity to earn a good income. She discussed her plan with her Michael, who was supportive and promised to visit her for a few days since they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Agnes quickly landed a job as a hostess at an upscale restaurant and renewed her lease. As planned, her boyfriend, Michael, visited her in September. During his visit, they had a great time, planned their upcoming wedding, and picked a destination for their honeymoon. Michael had to return to London after less than a week, leaving Agnes to work in Spain for another month. After that, she planned to visit her relatives in Latvia before flying to England to join her Michael. Unfortunately, these plans never came to fruition. Agnes went to the popular Costa del Sol nightclub with friends on September 6th. Earlier in the day, she had informed Michael of her plans and he approved. Agnes and her friends had a great time at the club, and Agnes even posted some photos on her online profile. She wore a striking mini dress and carried a small white clutch that night. As the night wore on and her friends prepared to leave, Agnes decided to stay a bit longer and then take a taxi home. Her friends didn't worry about her, as she was responsible and hadn't had much to drink. When they said their goodbyes and headed out, Agnes was chatting with a man who had bought her a drink and was trying to get her attention. After that night, Agnes disappeared without a trace. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. No one could recall what time she left the club, who she left with, or where she went afterwards. Agnes failed to show up at work the next day, and attempts to contact her were unsuccessful as her phone was turned off. Her colleagues and friends immediately raised concerns, but the police were slow to respond to the missing persons report. As the day drew to a close, a worried Michael called Agnes's mother to report that he had been unable to reach his fiancée all day, which was unusual. The following day, Agnes's parents and Michael jointly tried to contact the Spanish police to report her disappearance, but they were informed that a missing persons report could only be filed in person by a relative. Undeterred, Michael and Agnes's family booked the next available flight to Marbella. It wasn't until 5 days after Agnes's disappearance that her family was able to file a missing persons report. The investigation began with a search of Agnes's rented apartment, which appeared to be untouched, as if she had simply stepped out for a short time. Her documents, money, and expensive jewelry were still in place, the refrigerator was stocked with prepared meals, and several outfits were laid out on the bed, suggesting that Agnes had been preparing to go out, likely to the club on the night she vanished. To aid in the search, Agnes's friends and family distributed flyers with her picture throughout the city, and the media picked up the story, featuring it on TV news programs and the front pages of local newspapers. The police reviewed footage from CCTV cameras inside and outside the entertainment venue, but encountered a setback. The files had already been deleted. However, with the help of specialists, they were able to recover the recordings. One of the restored videos, taken by a camera near the parking lot exit, showed Agnes leaving the club around 6 a.m. with a man. It was clear that she did not leave voluntarily. The final footage, which showed Agnes alive, was thoroughly examined by experts. However, the more they studied the footage, the more alarming it became. Agnes was seen being led by a man to the parking lot, clearly under duress. He had a tight grip on her waist, and Agnes looked frightened. She attempted to break free multiple times and appeared to be saying something emotional, but he persisted in leading her to a Mercedes A63 with tinted windows. As he forced Agnes into the car, it became clear that another person was already inside. Meanwhile, the first man got into the driver's seat. Agnes temporarily managed to open the car door and tried to escape, but he who had been standing next to her, likely the doorman, intervened and pushed her back into the car at the driver's signal. In return for his assistance, the driver appeared to hand the doorman something, presumably a cash reward. Agnes's phone was turned off 6 minutes after she got into the car, and it was never turned back on. The vehicle's subsequent movements couldn't be tracked because there were no CCTV cameras along the route. It became clear that the men in the cabin were the last people to see Agnes before she went missing. Despite this, the case was shrouded in secrecy from the start. Everyone involved in the investigation signed confidentiality agreements, and information was kept from the press and even Agnes's loved ones. For the first few months, Agnes's parents and Michael were left in the dark, with only vague updates that the investigation was ongoing and that it was too early to draw conclusions. As time passed without any word from Agnes, hope began to dwindle. Agnes's fiancé, Michael, periodically gave interviews pleading for help in finding her, but no one ever came forward with information. It wasn't until 6 months later that Agnes's relatives were finally shown footage from the club's cameras and given the names of the 3 men who had last been in contact with her. Wesley Capper, the son of a wealthy British millionaire, was identified as he who forcibly removed Agnes from a club and pushed her into a car. Wesley Capper was accompanied by his longtime friend, Craig Porter, who had no specific occupation and had previously been on the police's radar. A third man, Cyan Usman, a dark-skinned doorman, was also in the car. Under interrogation, all 3 men claimed they were innocent, stating that Agnes had voluntarily gotten into the car. According to Wesley Capper, he and a friend had met Agnes at a club and approached her to strike up a conversation. Wesley Capper claimed that Agnes was already intoxicated, but this contradicts the testimony of her friends. He also stated that Agnes had accepted a drink from him and his friend. Capper then invited Agnes to continue the party at his luxurious country home, which she allegedly agreed to. However, Wesley Capper claims that Agnes changed her mind once they were in the car and asked to be dropped off in the middle of the road, stating that she would take a cab home. Wesley Capper claimed that he dropped Agnes off at her requested location, which was an unlit stretch of road with no CCTV cameras. Craig Porter couldn't confirm or deny Wesley Capper's statement about Agnes's presence in their car. According to Porter's own admission, he was also extremely drunk and didn't know how or when Agnes got into the vehicle. He fell asleep shortly after leaving the parking lot and only woke up to find Agnes was no longer in the car. The doorman, Cyan Usman, confirmed that Agnes was intoxicated, but he couldn't say if she voluntarily got into the car. However, he did say that when the car moved, Agnes opened the door and nearly fell out. The driver then asked him to close the door, for which he received a large tip. When questioned, Cyan Usman said he didn't think Agnes's attempt to get out of the car was an escape attempt. In his opinion, she might have accidentally opened the door due to her intoxication. He also noted that Agnes didn't scream or ask for help during the incident. The security footage clearly shows Wesley Capper forcibly leading Agnes to the car, holding her by the waist and wrist. However, Wesley's defense is that Agnes was dizzy and he was only holding her to prevent her from falling. Later in the investigation, another unsettling video came to light, shot in the south of Spain, specifically at the Puerta de la Dua in the Su Grande Marina. The footage was of the luxury yacht belonging to John Capper, a millionaire and the father of one of the suspects. Dated September 10th, just 4 days after Agnes went missing, it showed Wesley Capper and 2 other men boarding the yacht. Notably, they carried a heavy suitcase and what appeared to be a rolled-up carpet. However, when questioned about this footage, Wesley Capper explained that he and his friends had traveled to the yacht simply to have a good time. He claimed the suitcase was packed with their belongings and what seemed to be a carpet was actually bedding. Wesley Capper failed to account for where everything had gone, considering none of these items were seen upon their return. The investigators meticulously searched the yacht and the automobile, only to find nothing of consequence because both vehicles had been thoroughly cleaned, thus destroying any possible DNA evidence. Interestingly, during this exhaustive search, a blonde hair was found in a car trunk, although determining its origin was not feasible as the hair itself had strangely disappeared over the course of the investigation, marking another puzzle within this intriguing case. A few hours after Agnes was last seen in the defendant's car, Wesley Capper made several calls to emergency services, but hung up each time without waiting for an answer. It seemed as though he was afraid or uncertain about what to do. Wesley Capper claimed he was drunk and made the calls randomly. The lawyer for the Agnes family argued that Agnes was likely already dead, and her body was probably at the bottom of the sea, hidden in the suitcase the suspects had brought on board the yacht. He also believed that the case had been intentionally delayed, giving the suspects ample time to destroy any evidence that could prove their guilt. It wasn't until a year and a half after Agnes's disappearance that Wesley Capper, Porter, and Usman were finally brought to trial. They were accused of holding Agnes against her will and forcing her into a car. Unfortunately, due to a lack of evidence, no further charges could be made. This decision outraged Agnes's relatives, but the judge stood firm. In 2019, nearly 5 years after Agnes's disappearance, the three men were brought to trial again. Despite the prolonged period, they continued to deny their guilt, claiming that Agnes voluntarily got into the car. The prosecutor argued that the doorman should be considered an accomplice for helping the defendants drive the victim away. The doorman, Usman, could have faced a 5-year prison sentence. Instead, he defended himself, stating that he was a suspect due to his skin color and lack of access to a good lawyer. He claimed that he sent all his earnings to a starving family in Africa. Wesley Capper and lawyers argued that their clients were only guilty of persuading Agnes to get into the car, not forcing her. They believed that Agnes was dropped off on the road as requested, but was possibly kidnapped and killed by someone else while waiting for a cab. The judge's verdict was met with surprise and anger from Agnes's relatives, as none of the defendants received any punishment. Usman was acquitted of all charges. Wesley Capper was given a 2-year sentence for taking advantage of Agnes's intoxication to coax her into his car, and Porter received a 6-month sentence for aiding Wesley Capper's actions. However, they received suspended sentences and did not serve any time in prison. Instead, they paid Agnes's family £101,000 in compensation. Agnes's family was unhappy with the outcome and decided to appeal. It later came to light that the defendants had both committed further offenses while awaiting the court's decision. Wesley Capper, who was intoxicated by alcohol and drugs at the time, hit and killed a woman with his vehicle and then fled the scene. Meanwhile, Porter and a friend, who were also intoxicated, stole a car after violently assaulting its owner. Wesley Capper received a surprisingly lenient sentence of probation for his serious crime, thanks to his lawyer's skilled defense. As part of his sentence, he paid a substantial amount of compensation to the family of she he had killed in a car accident. In contrast, Porter was not as fortunate and was sent to jail, although the exact length of his sentence is not publicly known. Nearly 7 years after Agnes's disappearance, the prime suspect in her case finally faced consequences. However, it wasn't the law that caught up with Wesley Capper, but his own destructive lifestyle. Years of substance abuse took a serious toll on his health. During the -19 pandemic, Capper was hospitalized, and after beginning to recover from the illness, he suffered a stroke. He passed away on July 26, 2021, at the age of 44. At that time, Agnes's parents appealed to the court again, but unfortunately, the suspect had since passed away and could no longer face prosecution. Despite this development, the case was still before the Supreme Court, although a new turn of events would arise 9 years later, long after Agnes's fate had been presumed, her body never found, alive or dead. Following this, her parents, sister Michael, and their lawyer converged on a plausible theory. It suggested that the perpetrators had likely disposed of Agnes's body in a suitcase that was secretly boarded on a yacht, eventually dropped in a distant, undisclosed part of the open ocean. In mid-June, a gardener at the exclusive Lida Golf Club in the Costa del Sol region discovered a mysterious object near the coast while cleaning the area. Upon closer inspection, the object turned out to be an old, badly damaged suitcase. The gardener did not attempt to open it and instead called the police. When law enforcement officers opened the suitcase, they found human remains inside. Further examination revealed that the remains belonged to she, approximately 25 to 35 years old at the time of her death. It was also determined that the suitcase had been submerged in water for around 10 years before washing up on the shore. Based on these findings, the police hypothesized that the remains might belong to Agnes, a woman who had gone missing 9 years ago. To confirm this theory, investigators are conducting DNA tests to compare Agnes's DNA with the remains found in the suitcase. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Alicia Canales McGuire. On September 20th, 2017, around 1:55 a.m., a series of events unfolded in Everett, Washington. Multiple people dialed 911 after being startled by loud bangs. 10 minutes after the initial calls, police officers arrived at the scene, where they were met with a horrific sight. 24-year-old Alicia Canales McGuire lay dead on the doorstep, just outside the door. Investigators cracked this heartbreaking case thanks to social media and CCTV footage. Born on October 29, 1992 in Mount Vernon, Washington, Alicia was the daughter of Manuel and Michelle Canales. Throughout her adult life, she worked as a caregiver, driven by her passion for helping others. Raised on a farm, Alicia started working at the age of 5, which instilled in her the value of hard work. She often returned to the family farm to lend a hand. Alicia cherished family time, regularly visiting and speaking with her loved ones, never failing to express her love when bidding them farewell. Alicia lived in Birdsview with her husband Bradley. The couple got married in a beautiful beach ceremony at Deception Pass in July 2017. However, the investigators soon discovered that Alicia didn't reside in the house where she died. Instead, it was her sister Amanda Canales' home, where Amanda lived with her 3 kids. Amanda had a work commitment in New York and asked Alicia to take care of her children during her absence. Alicia, who adored her nephew and nieces, was more than happy to help out. There was a staying nanny in the house with her, and she was one of those who called 911. She woke up to the sound of gunshots, and when she went downstairs, she saw that Alicia was lying at the front door and not moving. The police officers who arrived at the scene took immediate action, beginning with a thorough examination of the house to rule out the possibility that the perpetrator was still inside. They conducted a meticulous search, confirming that only the nanny and Amanda's children were present in the house. Once the frightened children had been safely removed from the house, the police commenced their investigation for evidence. A car parked in front of the house caught their attention, with shell casings discovered nearby, indicating that the shooter had been standing beside the vehicle, just before the front door. Several bullets had hit the door frame, and Alicia's lifeless body was found lying face down, right outside the door. It didn't resemble a robbery. The house was tidy, and it seemed as though the perpetrator hadn't even stepped inside. But who would want Alicia dead, and what could be the motive behind it? When the detectives found out that it was her sister's house, they began to suspect that it was a case of mistaken identity. Perhaps Amanda was the target, but she was in New York when the crime occurred. The nanny, a witness who was present in the house at the time of the crime, provided a calm and coherent account to the investigators. During questioning, she explained that she was upstairs when she heard the sound of gunshots. Upon looking down, she saw Alicia lying face down on the floor, motionless. However, she did not see the perpetrator of the shooting. Startled, the nanny immediately called 911. The nanny gave the police the first crucial lead. She reported that Amanda, Alicia's sister, had problems with her ex-husband, Kevin Lewis. The detectives pored over the reports from the local sheriff's office and discovered that this was not the first time someone had called the police to that address. Every prior incident involved domestic disputes between Amanda and Kevin Lewis, which caught the detectives' attention. They obtained Kevin Lewis's home address, situated in a different part of Everett, and paid him a visit before dawn to conduct an interview. Although his house was shrouded in darkness, Kevin responded to their knock on the door. During the conversation, the officers asked Kevin if he knew where his ex-wife was, and he replied that she should be at home. He looked like he had just woken up. The detectives asked him to tell them where he had spent the night, and he said he had been at home all night, with his sister and mother able to confirm this. He didn't ask what was the reason for the detectives' visit. When the detectives told Kevin about the shooting at his children's residence, he remained impassive, which raised suspicions. A typical parent would have asked about their children's well-being, but Kevin didn't. The detectives then informed Kevin that Amanda was out of town on business, to which he reacted with apparent surprise, saying, "Really?" Next, the detectives investigated neighboring houses and discovered that 2 of them had surveillance cameras that could corroborate or contradict Kevin's alibi. The footage revealed that Kevin's claim of staying home all night was false. A car was seen pulling up to his driveway approximately 40 minutes before the attack on Alicia. The footage showed someone resembling Kevin leaving the house, entering the car, and driving away. Although the recording quality was poor, the police couldn't positively identify the individual. A closer review of footage from another camera provided additional details about the car. While they couldn't identify the vehicle's make, they noticed that the front right rim was a different color from the other 3 light-colored rims. The car returned to Kevin's neighborhood about 20 minutes before the 911 calls reporting the shooting started. The person who had entered the car earlier returned to the house and went back inside. Amanda learned about her sister Alicia's death a few hours later, while she was in New York. When the investigators asked Amanda if she thought her ex-husband Kevin could have been the one who shot Alicia, she replied that she had no doubt it was him. Even though their 8-year marriage had ended, Amanda was still not ready to fully acknowledge how toxic the relationship with her ex-husband had been. Amanda was deeply unhappy throughout their marriage. Even after their divorce in June 2017, Kevin's threats continued to intimidate her. He had physically abused her in the past, and despite their separation, he remained a threat. After the divorce, Amanda was awarded full custody of their 3 children, and Kevin was ordered to pay $800 monthly in child support. However, he repeatedly violated the restraining order, showing up outside her home and terrifying both Amanda and their children. Despite these violations, the police never charged Kevin with any crime. Amanda suffered a severe beating in her driveway just a few weeks before her sister's death. One night, she arrived home late and parked her car next to her house. As she opened the door, someone attacked her. The assault happened so quickly that she didn't get a glimpse of the attacker's face. Nevertheless, she was certain who was responsible: Kevin Lewis, 30, who would later become the prime suspect in the murder of Alicia Canales McGuire, Amanda's sister. The investigators believed that he intended to take the life of his ex-wife. Kevin did not know that she was in New York during that time, and he didn't know that Amanda had asked Alicia to look after her children while she was away. However, there was an inconsistency in this theory. If the man in the footage was really Kevin, it meant he was at his house at the time of the shooting. In addition, his sister and mother provided him with an alibi. The police continued their investigation, exploring various explanations for what had occurred. They revisited Amanda's house to re-examine the scene, including the path the bullets took. According to experts, Alicia was shot when the door was ajar, and the shooter fired at least 7 times, with the shots coming from outside the house and entering it. The evidence gathered at the scene suggested that the shooter stood next to the garage, firing initially, before moving towards the door and firing again from inside it. The medical examiner identified the cause of Alicia's death as multiple gunshot wounds to the head and torso. She got struck by 5 shots, and 2 of the wounds showed gunpowder stippling injury. The medical examiner testified that he could not determine the sequence of the 5 shots, but said that the last 2 gunshot wounds to the head were probably the last 2 wounds inflicted. According to the experts, the 7 shell casings found at the crime scene were fired from the same firearm, and the bullet wounds to Alicia's head were inflicted at close range. The investigators analyzed this theory, but didn't find any evidence confirming this. The shell casings found at the crime scene also attracted the attention of the police because this brand of casings was not very common. They were Russian-made casings manufactured under the Tulamo brand. Since it was not a very common brand, the investigators hoped they would identify the seller of these cartridges and maybe even the buyer. The investigators found that Walmart had sold .40 caliber cartridges of a specific brand, with one of the stores located near the crime scene. Walmart representatives informed the detectives that a man had recently bought 9mm Tulamo cartridges, and they had CCTV footage of the transaction. The detectives promptly visited Walmart to review the footage, which was recorded on September 18th, 2 days prior to Alicia's death. They initially suspected that Kevin Lewis might be the buyer, but they were mistaken. The man in the footage was not Kevin, and he had paid using a credit card. The investigators looked into this individual and discovered no connection to Kevin Lewis, Amanda, or the nanny, forcing them to search for new evidence. After thoroughly examining all the existing theories, the investigators approached Amanda to gather new information about Kevin. Initially, Amanda stated that their relationship was okay during the honeymoon phase, but Kevin's behavior gradually became more aggressive, culminating in physical abuse. Their tumultuous relationship ultimately ended in divorce, with a restraining order issued against Kevin and Amanda gaining full custody of their children. Despite her emotional distress, Amanda firmly believed that Alicia's death was a case of mistaken identity, convinced that the intended target was actually herself. She suspected that Lewis had orchestrated the attack, but the police found that Kevin had a solid alibi, as he was at home during the time of the shooting. The investigators have again reviewed the footage taken on the night of Alicia's death. Now they noticed something they hadn't noticed before. This low-quality recording shows Kevin, or the man who left his house, walking up to the car and getting into the back seat behind the driver. But why didn't he get into the front passenger seat? In search of an answer, the investigators concluded that someone else was already sitting in the front passenger seat. Therefore, by the time the car pulled up to Kevin Lewis's house, there were probably already 2 people in it, and perhaps that's why he had to sit in the back seat. The police had no evidence to link Kevin to Alicia's death. However, they gathered evidence of Kevin's attacks on his ex-wife Amanda and arrested him in November 2018. The court sentenced him to 3 years in prison. More than a year had passed since Alicia's death, but the case remained unsolved. Then, in 2019, a breakthrough finally occurred when a woman contacted the police station with crucial information. She provided a tip that a girl who lived in nearby Spokane had been overheard bragging at a party about being hired to kill someone on York Road, the same road where Alicia was fatally shot. Although the police were initially skeptical, given that Spokane is about 5 hours away from Everett, they decided to investigate further. The woman who called said she was at a party where she met a young woman who introduced herself as Angelica. The latter bragged about how she and her boyfriend participated in the crime. According to this woman, Angelica said someone died because of a shot in the head, and they were shooting from around the corner and were hired by the children's father. Moreover, Angelica said they took the wrong person's life. It was a case of mistaken identity. The police never publicly disclosed the details of this case, but investigators and family members were aware that Alicia had been fatally shot in the head. Since Angelica possessed knowledge of the crime's specifics, the police became intrigued by her information. During their search for Angelica, investigators discovered that her real name was Alexis Hale. On her social media, they found photos of her posing with a 9mm pistol, which may have been the murder weapon. Additionally, there were several videos showing a man in the background, later identified as Alexis's boyfriend, Jadon Phelps. On the night of Alicia's death, Alexis Hale posted a video filmed through the windshield of a car, analyzing the road signs. The investigators determined the exact location of this car at that moment. It was about a 10-minute drive from Kevin Lewis's house. In the following video, taken a few hours after Alicia's death, Jadon Phelps bragged about a wad of money. The investigators saw 5 comments under Phelps's photo on social media, and one of the comments was from his aunt, whom they recognized as Kevin Lewis's mother. It turned out that Jadon Phelps was Kevin's cousin. The police had sufficient evidence to make arrests. The first person they detained was Alexis Hale, who was 17 years old. As the officers handcuffed her, she protested, claiming they had no right to arrest her due to her age, yet she seemed aware of the reasons behind her arrest. She promptly requested a lawyer. Meanwhile, in a different part of the city, the police took Jadon Phelps into custody. The investigators used Phelps and Hale's phone records to show that they had driven from Spokane to Everett to carry out the shooting. Security footage from Lewis's neighbors showed someone getting into a car in the early hours of September 20th. The man in a white top left at 11:13 a.m. and returned at 1:37 a.m. When the police went to see Lewis after Alicia's death, he was wearing a white top. Alexis remained silent with the investigators. At the time, Kevin Lewis, now known as Kevin, was serving a 3-year prison sentence for assaulting Amanda. The investigators turned to Phelps, the one who had arranged the crime, hoping to gather information. As they suspected, Phelps confessed and revealed the name of the man who had hired him, Kevin Lewis. The police took Phelps to the crime scene where he provided further details of the crime. Phelps initially just showed them where the house was, and they were taking him back to his home. Later, when they went back, Phelps showed them the area where he was standing, and he described how Alicia opened the door slightly, and as Lexi was walking towards them, Phelps started shooting at the door. Alicia closed the door, and Phelps opened it and fired a few more shots. Kevin Lewis, who was already in jail on an unrelated charge, was arrested on charges of aggravated murder with a firearm, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation to commit murder for the September 2017 death of Alicia Canales McGuire. In July 2020, Phelps, who was then 20, pleaded guilty to premeditated first-degree murder, and the court sentenced him to 31 years in prison. Hale, who was then 18, pleaded guilty to the same charge and got 15 years. Phelps testified at the trial that he had committed the crime for money and the street cred. He claimed he had spent the money Lewis paid him to get some tattoos, a pair of Timberland boots, and a Ferragamo belt buckle. He also claimed his former girlfriend had got the pistol from a family member. Lewis pleaded not guilty and faced a trial later that year. The prosecution said that he had paid $2,400 to his cousin and his girlfriend to get his ex-wife out of the way, turning them into teenage assassins. But in a tragic case of mistaken identity, it had been Alicia who had opened the door. Phelps said Lewis had directed them to the home, but claimed he didn't know who the target was, just the address. On the way back, Lewis handed Phelps an envelope of money after dropping Lewis back at his residence. Phelps and Hale returned to the location Lewis had pointed out, and Phelps fired the gun until it was empty, starting from his position near the garage, and fired the last couple after walking up to the front porch. The muzzle of the gun crossed the threshold. The last couple of shots were around the neck and head area. Phelps and Hale left in their car, but then returned because they believed they might have left a glove at the scene. When they returned, they saw police cars, so they turned around and left. They accessed GPS directions and drove back to Spokane. The defense argued that Lewis had never actually used the word kill when talking to his cousin and had simply said to get the target out of the way. But the prosecution reminded the court of Kevin's history of violence and the threats he'd made against Amanda. In November 2021, Lewis was found guilty of first-degree murder by a jury following a 6-week trial that lasted less than 3.5 hours. In January 2022, at the age of 34, Kevin was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. As part of the sentence, Judge Thompson prohibited Lewis from having any contact with his ex-wife, children, Phelps, and Hale for the remainder of his life. According to records, Lewis is currently serving his sentence at the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla County. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Kelly Cochran. Christopher Reagan was born in Detroit, Michigan, where he spent his formative years and received his education. At the age of 20, he made the decision to join the military, driven by a desire to defend his country. Christopher discovered his true calling and committed himself wholeheartedly to serving his nation with honor and unwavering dedication. As a guardian of the citizens' peace, this decision influenced the course of his life. Christopher was sent to a military base near the town of Marquette. There, on the military base not far from Marquette, fate brought Christopher together with Terry, a young teacher from the town of Iron River. Recalling their acquaintance, Terry told the detective how, being young, they would see each other, and a mutual attraction arose at first sight. The young people often met on the streets of the city and felt too shy to greet each other, but over time, they began to walk together. Their communication became more and more frequent and intimate, and eventually it grew into a close friendship. For several years, they remained only close friends because Christopher's military service did not allow him to pursue a serious relationship. At some point, Chris decided to leave the military service and move to Traverse City, a city located in the same state but far from the place where his beloved lived. However, the distance did not become a barrier to their feelings. On the contrary, communication between them became even closer. In December 2012, Christopher proposed to Terry to start a long-distance romantic relationship. Both were single at that moment, knew each other for many years, and always maintained a proper relationship. After a short period, the lovers recognized that they shared numerous common interests: a deep appreciation for nature, a preference for a balanced lifestyle, and a yearning for serenity. This is why Iron River proved to be the ideal location for both of them. The couple reached the decision to cohabitate. Christopher relocated to live with Terry, secured employment at a factory manufacturing components for naval vessels, and before long, had subordinates reporting to him. Life was unfolding in the most favorable manner possible. However, after 2 years of living together, problems began in the relationship between Christopher and Terry, and the passion gradually faded. As they did not try to overcome the difficulties of this difficult period, it became obvious that they would not be able to keep their connection. Eventually, they made the difficult decision to part ways. The parting was peaceful, and the former lovers managed to maintain friendly relations. After breaking up with Terry, Christopher could no longer continue his life in her house, so he decided to rent his own place. As time went on, it dawned on him that he wanted to change where he lived as well. Chris began looking for a more dynamic and vibrant city. He responded to job openings in various locations by sending out his resume. In October 2014, fate presented Christopher with the opportunity to start a new chapter in Asheville, North Carolina. Here, he found not only a job but also a cozy place with many picturesque natural attractions. In this new city, Chris was about to begin his life anew. On October 14th, Christopher wrote Terry that he had taken the day off and would be free the next day. The reason was a doctor's appointment, after which he suggested they meet up and go for a walk as they had often done when they still lived together. However, on October 15th, he did not contact his girlfriend. Terry was deeply concerned. She had tried reaching him for several days, and worried, she contacted their shared acquaintances, but they had no information. 10 days later, a distressed Terry filed a missing person report about Christopher's disappearance. The report was registered, but the police swiftly reassured Terry, stating that people occasionally vanish for a time before returning, sometimes even settling in other locations. At the police station, Terry also mentioned that Christopher had recently been offered a job in North Carolina, implying he may have made it to his new residence and chosen to start afresh, cutting ties with the past. To avoid making idle speculations, investigators launched a detailed investigation. They managed to identify the company where Christopher had recently started working and contacted one of the employees to find out what he knew about Christopher. However, surprisingly, no information could be obtained, as Christopher had not shown up for work for 10 days. The police speculated that he might have been the victim of an accident, given his frequent solitary trips outdoors. Search teams ventured into the local woods, trying to check everything on the paths Christopher liked to explore. Specially trained dogs were deployed to assist in the search, but unfortunately, no trace of the missing man was ever found. Terry then suggested a visit to Christopher's former apartment in order to make sure that no accident had happened to him, and perhaps traces could be found there that would indicate his current whereabouts. Agreeing to Terry's suggestion, the investigators went to the home of the missing Christopher. Upon entering the apartment, the detectives were struck by the chaos inside. Items were strewn across the floor, and closets were left open. Their first thought was that Christopher was probably just a sloppy person and had forgotten to clean up. Terry, however, immediately refuted this idea, claiming that her ex-boyfriend was not that sloppy. The detectives began to suspect that the case might be connected to a crime. After inspecting Christopher's home, they decided to start a larger-scale search for him. The police carefully searched the neighborhood and eventually found Reagan's car outside the city limits, about 8 miles from Iron River. It seemed unlikely that he had left his car there intentionally, so they had to break into one of the doors to access the vehicle. The interior contained only ordinary items such as a hat, coat, and gloves, but one of the policemen noticed a small piece of yellow paper on the front passenger seat with a detailed route written on it, though no specific address was provided. The authorities decided to follow the route indicated in the note. Terry explained that despite living in Iron River, Christopher still hadn't learned the names of streets and roads, so he wrote down directions like turning at a bus stop or driving past a gas station. Terry shared that judging from the detailed notes, this was the first time Christopher was headed to this location. The group of detectives followed the route indicated on the piece of paper, which took them to a neighboring town, stopping in front of the house noted in Christopher's notes. The investigators knocked on the door, needing to find out who lived there and why Christopher had traveled that way. The door was opened by Jason Cochran, an overweight man who was surprised to see uniformed men in front of his house. His wife Kelly soon appeared. The officers informed the couple that they were investigating the disappearance of Christopher Reen, and a piece of paper found in his abandoned car pointed to this address. Kelly candidly revealed that she worked with Christopher at the same plant, and they got along well and were even friends. She had not been in contact with him in recent weeks, but in mid-October, she tried to contact Chris via text messages, but received no response and assumed he had gone to North Carolina for a new job. Kelly also mentioned that Christopher had been having health issues and may have just decided to start a new life. The investigators found themselves in a quandary. They did not understand why the route that led to the Cochran home was written down on a piece of paper found in the missing man's car. Despite the lack of answers, the couple expressed their willingness to cooperate with the investigation. After a brief questioning, without getting the information they needed, the detectives left their home. The next phase of the investigation involved interviewing Christopher's co-workers. The detectives visited the factory, where they spoke with employees and supervisors. One of the supervisors revealed that Christopher was having an affair with Kelly Cochran, and rumors about this had been circulating for months. This new information piqued the investigators' interest, and they decided to re-interview the Cochran couple to clarify the nature of their relationship. Ultimately, Kelly admitted that she and Christopher had indeed been involved in an affair, but she was unable to disclose this previously due to her husband's presence. She explained that she and her husband Jason have an open relationship, and Jason is generally accepting of his wife's affairs. However, the topic was sensitive, and it may have hurt his feelings. Christopher's co-workers disputed Kelly's claims, stating that Jason was strongly opposed to the affair, and there was no casual relationship in the Cochran family as Kelly had suggested. Jason himself had a conversation with the police that revealed he was vehemently against his spouse's unfaithfulness, though this stance made him a suspect. However, the lack of decisive evidence made it impossible to determine that he was involved in Christopher's disappearance, and the officers had no choice but to release Kelly and Jason from the police station. The investigation dragged on for 5 long months, and the mysterious case remained unsolved. On March 5, 2015, the case was placed in the hands of a new investigator, Jeremy Ogden, who immediately began actively working on it. Ogden's initial task was to thoroughly analyze the Cochran family's history. He learned that Kelly had met Jason while still in high school, and they began living together immediately after graduation. The two had very different personalities. Kelly was socially adept and loved to talk, while Jason was known for his reticence and taciturnity, only answering questions when asked. Despite these differences, the couple decided to get married and started their own company providing swimming pool maintenance services. The business was modest but brought them a decent income, with most of the work taken on by Jason. The constant stress and strain took a toll on his health, and he began to have back problems, feeling heavier and heavier every day. Eventually, he realized he was unable to continue the business, and Kelly took over all the work of running it. During this challenging time, Kelly sought ways to help her husband recover, and she discovered a plant that offered hope for Jason's recovery. However, the use of this plant in medical practice had just begun, and it was prohibited in the state where they resided. The only option for Kelly and Jason to obtain the drug was to relocate, and they decided to move to Iron River Township, Michigan in 2014. Here, Jason was able to consult a doctor and receive a prescription for the remarkable plant, ultimately finding relief from his suffering. In early 2014, the couple found employment at a plant that specialized in manufacturing parts for U.S. warships, where they worked alongside Christopher. Kelly made every effort to ensure her family's financial well-being, and she and Christopher became close friends, which was particularly important for Christopher, who had been having difficulties in his relationship with Terry. The investigation continued, and after reviewing the evidence, the prosecutor made a strong case for a search warrant of the Cochrans' home. The search uncovered a disturbing book by Jason describing murder scenes, one matching Christopher's characteristics. Suspicions about Jason grew, leading to another search, but the home was empty when police arrived. No one opened the door, and it turned out that immediately after the initial search, Kelly and Jason had left town and moved to another state, Indiana. Their quick getaway had investigators worried, as they feared they might not be able to find the crucial evidence they had been hunting for months. It was especially important to collect DNA samples from the suspects. That's when Michigan police officers contacted their Indiana counterparts, asking them to take DNA samples. The Indiana police officers headed to the Cochrans' new home, and the couple did not object at all to the procedure, as there was no legitimate reason to charge them with murder, nor was there any evidence of the victim's body itself. The investigation was gradually losing steam, leaving less and less chance of solving the disappearance of Christopher. Time passed, and suddenly, on February 22, 2016, a call rang out at the police station in Hobart, Indiana. On the other end of the line was a worried Kelly Cochran. She tried to explain that her husband, Jason, was not breathing, but in her state of panic and emotional shock, it was difficult to provide specific details. Rescuers arrived to find Kelly in a panicked state, obstructing doctors. Jason was discovered dead, his face suggesting extreme overheating. Investigators uncovered a syringe at the home, but the forensic report revealed Jason's death was by strangulation, not drug abuse. This led to a re-examination of the evidence, with Kelly becoming the prime suspect in both her husband's murder and the disappearance of Christopher Reen. On February 23, 2016, Kelly Cochran was invited to the police station to testify in Jason's murder case. During the interrogation, the investigators asked her directly about her involvement in her husband's death and whether she had administered excessive doses of illegal drugs to him. Despite the lack of concrete evidence and pressure from the investigators, the young woman did not confess to either the murder of her husband or the kidnapping of Christopher. Several months later, investigators have not been able to find convincing evidence of Kelly's guilt, as well as the grounds for a possible arrest. During the investigation, Detective Jeremy Ogden met Walter Hammerman, a close friend of Jason's. After learning about the tragic incident from Kelly herself, Walter quickly went to the police. He emphasized that illegal drugs could not have caused Jason's death, as he knew his friend well, and Jason would have told him about any changes in his life. Additionally, Jason had been using only medicinal herbs to alleviate the persistent back pain he had been experiencing for a long time. However, Walter noticed that his friend had been going through a difficult situation lately. In March last year, Jason shared his concerns with him, stating that he and Kelly had to travel to Indiana due to suspicions from the Iron River police regarding their involvement in the disappearance of a man. Everything that had occurred had significantly affected Jason. He had even become depressed and attempted to take his own life, which necessitated intensive treatment. Walter also observed a noticeable change in his friend's conduct. Kelly started to exert more and more control over his life, and it seemed that Jason was continuously on edge, whereas previously, the boys could spend hours playing video games together. Jason now began to avoid social gatherings as soon as his wife returned from work. This information became a crucial piece in the investigation and enabled the investigators to comprehend the dynamics within the Cochran family. After the medical examiner determined that Jason had died from strangulation, Detective Ogden began to devise a cunning plan to force Kelly to tell the truth about the fate of Christopher Reen. It was decided to use Walter, Jason's close friend, as bait to lure Kelly into a trap and force her to make a mistake. While Walter accepted a difficult role, he was to become a tool in the hands of the investigation and play out a performance in front of Kelly Cochran. On March 12, 2016, he called Kelly while under the watchful eye of police officers equipped with a listening device. He was to give Kelly a fictitious letter from Jason that supposedly contained something important. Walter also told Kelly that her husband had given the letter to her shortly before his death, with the condition that he not open the envelope and immediately send it to the police if anything happened to him. Suddenly, Kelly asked Walter to drop the idea, which came as a real shock to both Walter and the police officers who had been monitoring the situation. Despite this revelation, detectives still had no direct evidence. In the weeks that followed, Kelly was subjected to numerous interrogations by investigators in an attempt to get the truth out of her, but she continued to deny her guilt. On April 26, 2016, it suddenly became clear that Kelly Cochran had managed to slip away from the scrutiny of investigators, mocking the justice system. Detectives immediately joined forces with police officers from Iron River and Hobart, announcing a federal manhunt for Kelly Cochran. Walter Hammerman, who cooperated with the police, was shocked and frightened. He feared that the perpetrator would never be found and that she could once again get away with it and might later attempt to attack him. Kelly's phone was off, as if she was enjoying a game of cat and mouse with the cops. After 2 hectic days filled with unease and upheaval, Detective Jeremy Ogden managed to uncover the information that Kelly Cochran was located off the west coast of the United States. She had skillfully evaded the police and traveled to Kentucky, specifically to the town of Wingo, which is situated more than 6 hours away from Hobart. A detective notified the local law enforcement, advising that upon locating Kelly, they should apprehend her, exercising utmost caution due to her potential threat. On April 28th, police officers located Kelly at her cousin's home. The arrest team, responding quickly to the information, proceeded to the house, knowing that Kelly could be dangerous and prone to escape attempts. They acted quickly and without warning, and that afternoon, Kelly was apprehended and taken into custody. Detective Ogden arrived in Wingo, where he continued interviewing the suspect, along with investigators from Indiana and Michigan. After speaking with Kelly Cochran, the details became clear. The story of her relationship with Christopher Reen was much more complex and significant than everyone had initially believed. She genuinely loved him, and Kelly longed to escape this city and build a new life with him. However, everything changed on October 13, 2015, when Jason discovered her infidelity. They were fighting, and Jason remembered the pact the newlyweds made on their wedding night. According to that pact, the cheater was obligated to kill his lover if his cheating became known to his other half. Kelly claimed that she had never taken that agreement seriously. She thought it was a joke, but Jason was serious and warned her that he would do it himself if she didn't keep her vow. Kelly didn't want to take that responsibility, but she helped Jason commit this horrible crime. On the evening of October 14, 2015, Christopher Reen arrived at the home of his mistress, Kelly Cochran. It was a moment he wanted to enjoy, as their encounter was while Kelly's husband was away. The young woman offered him dinner, then a pleasant time and intimacy. Everything was going according to plan, and their evening promised to be special. But their solitude was interrupted by Jason's sudden appearance. He burst into the bedroom with a rifle in his hands. Panicked and terrified, Christopher realized he was in a death trap. Jason, without hesitation, took aim and fired a shot at Christopher's head. The bullet mortally wounded him, and Chris died on the spot. Afterward, under Jason's direction, the accomplices dragged the body into the basement and began dismembering it using a hacksaw. Christopher's limbs and head were detached from the torso, and the remains were placed in several trash bags and then disposed of by dumping them in the woods near the village of Crystal Falls. They drove Christopher's car away from the house to ward off suspicion. The couple thoroughly cleaned the house to remove evidence of the crime. The couple were accomplices to a terrible crime. Kelly Cochran also did not hide her participation in the tragic death of her husband. According to her, the idea of revenge was born when Jason, having discovered that Kelly had a lover, decided to commit the crime. Kelly, in turn, wanted to get back at him for the loss of happiness with the man she loved. She confessed that she was deeply in love with Christopher and felt that her spouse deprived her of the opportunity to be happy. She never could come to terms with the loss and the pain she felt on a daily basis. Kelly hated her husband for what he had forced her to do and realized she couldn't continue to live peacefully with it. The opportunity for a crime came on February 22, 2016, when Jason complained of back pain. Kelly talked him into giving him a shot with a medication. The dose of the medication was too high, but for some reason, it didn't work properly. Seeing that her husband was still breathing, Kelly suffocated Jason by covering his mouth and nose with her hands. Later, just in case, Kelly squeezed his neck to make sure her husband was already dead. This explained the appearance of bruises on the victim's body. After Kelly Cochran's testimony, she actively cooperated with the police to help determine where Christopher's remains were buried. On May 18, 2016, Detective Jeremy Ogden, along with a team of investigators and a canine team, went to a site near the village of Crystal Falls. This seldom visited neighborhood had become the hiding place of a terrible mystery. The team of investigators began a thorough sweep of the woods around the lake, each member carefully penetrating between the trees. One of the canine dogs suddenly detected a faint odor and led the officers forward. All the other officers followed the dog tensely, expecting the reveal to be close. The dog led the group to an unassuming hill, littered with fallen leaves and branches. Clearing it, the investigators found objects, one of which was unmistakably a human skull. Upon closer examination, it was obvious that the victim had been murdered. The bullet hole spoke for itself. Investigators had no doubt that they had discovered Christopher's severed head. Also found at the scene was a .22 caliber bullet, a broken gun, and glasses that probably belonged to Reagan. Dental records were used to identify the victim's remains. The missing person case that had plagued investigators for 2 years was finally solved. In April 2016, Kelly Cochran was formally charged with the murders of Christopher Reen and Jason Cochran. On February 13, 2017, the 34-year-old criminal was arraigned in Michigan State Court. The prosecutor emphasized that Kelly significantly diminishes her role by being the mastermind behind both crimes. He argued that Christopher viewed his relationship with Kelly as an occasional encounter, while she genuinely loved him and planned a future with him. Christopher's refusal to have a serious relationship with her led to rage, and Kelly decided to kill him by making up a story about a pact with her husband. The prosecution had strong evidence, including Kelly's confession in court. However, she presented a different version, according to which she was being abused by her jealous husband, who arranged the crime. He hid in the basement that day, caught the lovers off guard, and then grabbed a gun in a rage and shot Christopher. The idea of dismembering the body was Jason's suggestion, and he coerced Kelly into helping by threatening to kill him. The new version made the jury wonder about Kelly's guilt. They deliberated for 3 hours and still reached their verdict. Kelly was found guilty of the premeditated murder of Christopher Reen. She was given a life sentence without parole. Jason Cochran's case did not go to trial as a plea agreement was reached, and Kelly was sentenced to 65 years in prison. From the courtroom, Kelly Cochran was sent straight to Crown Point Correctional Facility in Ypsilanti, Michigan, where she is serving her sentence. Within the prison walls, Kelly continues to reveal details of her crimes. She claims that she and Jason committed more crimes, and Christopher is just one of their many victims. However, the details, names, and additional crimes that Kelly does not disclose make it difficult to corroborate her words. Kelly's brother has also heard from her that there were more victims, but there is no concrete evidence to back that up at this time. Detective Jeremy Ogden of the Hobart, Indiana Police Department is scrutinizing the details, hoping to uncover some clues and find evidence of other possible crimes committed by Kelly and Jason Cochran, in the hope that this additional evidence will help close a chapter in this dark story. 18-year-old Allison Bonilla was returning home by bus when she noticed 2 men following her. Scared, she texted her mother and boyfriend, saying she'd run home after she got off the bus. Unfortunately, Allison never returned home that day, and it took about 6 months to find her. Allison Pamela Bonilla Vasquez was born on November 7, 2001, in Cartago, Costa Rica. Being the only child in the family, Allison lived with her mother, Yendri Vasquez. But Yendri wasn't the only one involved in Allison's upbringing. Allison's grandparents, Ramon and Marjorie, and Aunt Xiomara, often helped Yendri. According to Yendri, Allison's father left them immediately after she was born. He was in a relationship with another woman who was pregnant at the time. He abandoned his wife and daughter to be with her. He didn't want to be a part of Allison's life. Yendri said there was only one time when he asked to meet his daughter. He had lung cancer at the time, and that was the only reason she allowed him to meet Allison. It's worth saying that his second family didn't even know about Allison's existence until almost the whole country heard about her disappearance. Allison was very close to her mother. She considered Yendri both her mom and her dad. It may seem strange, but she always gave her mother gifts for Father's Day. Their relationship was much closer than the one between mother and daughter. They were best friends who did everything together. Allison could tell Yendri absolutely anything without fear of being misunderstood or judged. Allison had a large family, and although she didn't have a father, she didn't feel lonely or abandoned. She loved spending time with her family and going to church every Sunday. Relatives described Allison as a very kind, outgoing, and friendly girl. She always looked happy in the photos. There wasn't even the slightest hint of sadness or longing in her eyes. Allison has dreamed of working in the modeling business all her life. She dropped out of the 8th grade to take makeup classes because combining school with makeup classes seemed too hard. Allison didn't want to waste time on an education that couldn't help her reach her goals. She soon started looking for a job to help her mother with the bills. Yet, every time Allison would drop off her resume at places, she wouldn't get any callbacks. Yendri saw that her daughter was very depressed about this. Knowing Allison wasn't suitable for any job because of her incomplete education, Yendri advised her to attend night school. Therefore, at 18, Allison enrolled in a school, Liceo Enrique Guerre Sens, located a few miles from her home. While studying at school, she received a certificate of completion of pastry courses and began making cakes. The cakes and other desserts made by Allison were just amazing. Everyone in the neighborhood was delighted with her cakes, so it became a good way for her to earn money. Allison was in a romantic relationship with Harold Segura Solano, who lived in Cachi. Cachi is a district of the Paraíso Canton in the Cartago province of Costa Rica. Allison usually spent the first half of the day at home with her mom. Later, she would meet with Harold and then go to evening school at 6 p.m. Therefore, she always returned home quite late, most often by bus. The path from the bus stop to her house ran through a quite dangerous place. It was a road with a lot of vegetation and an almost complete absence of light and people. So Allison always informed her mother of changes in her location. Sometimes, her mother even met her at a bus stop or the bridge halfway along the way. On March 4th, 2020, Allison went to her mom's salon to get a manicure and chat with her. After that, she visited her friend Paula, who studied at school with her. They spent about 15 minutes at Paula's house and then went to school together. They arrived there around 6 p.m. and split up, as both were in different courses. After spending about 15 minutes in an empty classroom, Allison realized that the school had canceled her classes that day. She decided the best way to continue the evening would be to visit her aunt, who lived near the school. Her aunt wasn't home, so Allison decided to spend time with her boyfriend Harold before going home. However, he wasn't home. His mother said he was at work and was supposed to return soon, inviting Allison to the house to wait for him. When Harold returned, they had a big family dinner, chatting on various topics and discussing plans. After a while, Harold excused himself, saying he would be back soon. He needed to leave urgently. At about 8:15 p.m., Allison left Harold's house without waiting for him to return. This moment was a start of a series of events that the whole country soon learned about. Harold returned home about 5 minutes later, and when he saw that Allison had left, he started texting her. He asked where she was and offered to take her home on his motorcycle. Allison immediately replied that she was already at the bus stop, so there was no need to worry. While waiting for the bus, Allison texted her friend Paula and asked if her cousin could take her home on his bike. He refused, saying his bike was a professional cycling bike unsuitable for two people. It remains unclear why she didn't ask her boyfriend for help. Perhaps she was angry with him or didn't want to bother him. As a result, Allison went home by bus. She got off the bus at about 8:43 p.m. Her home was about a mile away. Allison asked her mom to walk towards her as she had a bad feeling and was afraid. At 8:45 p.m., she texted her boyfriend and mother, saying two suspicious men were following her. They got off the bus at the same stop as her. Therefore, she decided to run home to lose them. As I have already mentioned, the road that Allison was going to run along was quite dangerous. There were almost no lights, and people rarely used it. There was only one surveillance camera there. It captured a blurry spot, which presumably was Allison. When Yendri, Allison's mom, came to the bridge half a mile from home to meet her daughter, she didn't find her. She tried to stay calm, thinking that maybe Allison had returned to the bus stop as a safety measure, but she didn't find her there either. Then she decided that Allison might not have noticed her and was already home. Yet, when Yendri returned home, she found the house empty. Yendri started calling the family and her daughter's friends, asking if they knew where Allison might be and inviting them to join the search. About 30 minutes later, Harold woke up to a phone call from Allison's aunt, Xiomara. She told him Allison was missing. He immediately started calling her, but it was all in vain. Her phone was unreachable. 3 hours later, Allison Bonilla was reported missing after her mother contacted the police. They started a search. Fortunately, Yendri knew how her daughter was dressed, as earlier, Allison had asked to take a picture of her in this outfit. Here's the last photo of Allison. At the beginning of the investigation, the police checked every place from the bus stop to Allison's house. They also examined various locations near the city, including Lake Catchy and the hydroelectric dam of the same name. On March 5, 2020, the police found the first clue, Allison's glasses. They were in the grass a mile from her house, but Allison seemed to disappear into thin air. After another 8 days, they found Allison Bonilla's ID on a coffee plantation. It was strange since they already searched that entire area many times before. Another suspicious fact was that her ID was in a too perfect place, easy to notice. There wasn't any dirt on it, as if someone had deliberately put it there to mislead the investigation or hide some details. 15 days after Allison went missing, Yendri received a call from Allison's father. Instead of offering his help or sympathy, he said that Allison went missing because she was too beautiful. Yendri did not expect such soulless words, so she immediately hung up. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Some time passed, and Allison's family, police, and volunteers continued searching for her nonstop. Every Sunday, they went outside and hung posters with Allison's photo. One day, they decided to paint messages on the street with Allison's steps, from crossing to the bridge, where it's believed she got lost. They painted 7 different messages, and one of them said, "Allison, we're waiting for you." In addition, they put posters on poles next to the road so that those passing by could notice it. At the same time, the police got a crucial lead. A man came to the police station and said he knew Allison and had seen her the night she disappeared. According to him, on March 4th, at about 8:30 p.m., he left the house on his motorcycle to pick up someone. While he was driving, he saw Allison, and he also saw a 2-door wine-colored BMW pull up next to her. He said he then turned around to see what was going on. He realized who the car belonged to. It was his cousin's BMW. It had bright yellow headlights, a distinctive feature of this vehicle. That's why he was 100% sure it was his cousin's car. In addition, another man also told police that he saw the same BMW that evening near the place where Allison disappeared. It belonged to 28-year-old Nelson Sanchez Urania, known locally as Sukia, since, according to the public, he was a member of a local gang. As it turned out, Nelson knew Allison. Their families had known each other for a long time. For a while, they even lived in the same neighborhood. Allison's mom later said she only had one interaction with him. It was just a neighborly relationship rather than a friendly one. One day, Nelson offered Allison and her cousins a ride home, to which she agreed since it was daylight. She was not alone and considered him a decent person. On March 2, 2020, 2 days before Allison disappeared, Nelson sent her a Facebook message asking her to answer some questions. On the advice of her cousin, Allison agreed. Nelson then asked Allison how she felt about him. He wanted to know if Allison liked him. Allison was puzzled, as she did not understand the meaning of such a question. They weren't friends, and they hardly knew each other. When Allison asked Nelson why he was asking this, he replied, "It's because I don't think bad of you, but I just wanted to ask you if you thought bad of me." Allison replied that she didn't dislike him, assuring him everything was fine between them. Nelson thanked her and said goodbye. On March 26, 2020, detectives obtained a warrant to search the house and confiscate Nelson Sanchez Urania's car, mobile phone, and computer. His phone contained some very disturbing things. There were a lot of pictures saved on his phone showing the abuse of women. During the search of his car, the police noted the perfect cleanliness in it. As it turned out, someone cleaned the carpet and seats with polishing liquid. Yet, the front carpet of the driver's seat and the trunk carpet were missing. The police found hair and drops of blood on the trunk lid and sent it to the laboratory for analysis. After completing the visual inspection of the car, the police conducted a test with a service dog. It showed possible traces of blood on the 2 front seats and in the trunk of the vehicle. The luminol exam confirmed it. It's a chemical that reacts with hemoglobin in blood cells. Traces of blood, which the owner tried to destroy with cleaning products, were found in many places in the car interior. While the detectives were waiting for the results from the lab, Nelson Sanchez Urania was a free man, but he was under surveillance. They monitored his every move to ensure he did not leave the city or the country. Yendry insisted that the investigators arrest him, but the police had no grounds for this yet, so he remained at large for several months. Yendry thought someone kidnapped Allison to later ask for a monetary reward for her return. She tried to stay calm and not panic. She hoped her daughter was still alive. She left Allison's room untouched. She didn't make the bed. She didn't rearrange things. She also bought gifts for her daughter in case she returned home. "I will continue to do this because until I see anything that proves that she is dead, my daughter is alive and will return home," she told reporters. On September 2, 2020, detectives finally received results from the laboratory, confirming that the hair and blood found in Nelson Sanchez Urania's car belonged to Allison. The police arrested him on the same day. Later, Urania's ex-girlfriend told the police that he had never physically harmed her, but there was a lot of moral pressure in their relationship. He did not allow her to communicate with friends or use the internet. According to her, he only wanted an intimate relationship with her. Urania's former boss said he treated his work irresponsibly and once even stole about $1,000. In addition, they interviewed his landlord, who said that one of Urania's ex-girlfriends left him because she was tired of paying his bills. She called him a very spoiled man. On September 4th, Nelson Sanchez Urania confessed what he had done to Allison Bonilla. According to him, on the night Allison disappeared, driving by, he saw her alone, walking along an empty road. He decided to take advantage of the fact that it was late at night. Nelson realized Allison would not be afraid to get into his car because she knew him. He offered to give her a ride, to which she agreed and got into the car. But instead of going home, he turned the other way and took her to a coffee plantation, where he forced her to get out of the car. Nelson hit her so hard that her glasses fell off and she almost fainted. After that, he took her to a nearby abandoned house where he had intercourse with her against her will and then severely beat her. Urania then took her to the front seat of his car to tie her hands with some cloth and duct tape. Then, Urania put her in the trunk and drove to a landfill in San Geronimo Cachi. There, he threw Allison off a cliff into a pile of garbage. He explained his actions by using too many illegal substances. He said he was heavily under their influence. He also explained that he was obsessed with Allison. According to him, when he saw her that night, he knew that this was the right moment to realize his obscene fantasies. As is often the case in such stories, Nelson Sanchez Urania later retracted his confession, saying that the police had put pressure on him, but there was enough evidence against him to bring charges. The maximum sentence he faced was 35 years. Early in the morning on September 4th, the search team went to the landfill in San Geronimo to search for Allison's body, but since the area was too vast and not easily accessible, finding Allison's remains was not an easy task. In addition, 6 months have passed since her disappearance. Only 25 days after Urania's confession, the police found human bones, vertebrae, ribs, part of the pelvis, a femur, fragments of clothes that Allison was wearing on the day of her disappearance, as well as one sneaker with nails inside. The police sent all these clues for examination. Jose Francisco Herrera, the suspect's lawyer, said the evidence could have been falsified because it was found by a group of volunteer rescuers, not the judicial police. In addition, Herrera said it was strange the authorities had found human remains in the area specified by Urania on the same day when his client changed his statement and said he wasn't guilty. Bonilla family's lawyer, Rodrigo Araya, criticized the change in the suspect's testimony, saying the incident was a mockery of the authorities' work. On October 5, 2020, the experts confirmed that the remains found belonged to Allison Bonilla. Since the search team didn't find all parts of Allison's body, Forensic experts were unable to determine the exact cause of her death. However, the expert who examined the remains concluded that numerous fractures on her body occurred after death, indicating a fall from a great height. The clothes found were torn, and there were bite marks on the sneakers, so experts concluded it could have been the work of animals, and that is why the remains were in different parts of the landfill. Yendri, Allison's mom, was furious that the police hadn't listened to her and hadn't arrested Urania earlier. Maybe he would have confessed even earlier, and then Allison's body could still be intact. It was a great tragedy for the whole family. It's an unimaginable pain that I'm going through, but she's in a better place where no one will hurt her, Yendri said. The trial of Nelson Sanchez Urania began on July 19, 2021. One of the witnesses at the trial was Allison's boyfriend, Harold Segura Solano. In his statement, he said Allison was at his house with his mother when he returned from work at about 6:30 p.m. on March 4, 2020. At some point, he left for 5 or 10 minutes. Upon returning, Harold saw that Allison had left without saying goodbye. He kept in touch with her through text messages while she was on her way home. After she got off the bus, she informed him that 2 men were following her. With that in mind, Harold insisted that she should take a taxi. He said he would pay the taxi driver himself, but Allison refused twice and texted him that she would run to her house. He didn't receive any more messages from her after that. However, according to him, he informed only his mother about the situation. He didn't contact Yendri, Allison's mother. He explained that he didn't do it because his phone's battery had run out, and then he fell asleep for 30 minutes. He discovered that his girlfriend was missing from Allison's aunt, who called him. From that moment on, he said he got scared and called Allison's cell phone several times, but all calls went straight to voicemail. WhatsApp messages were also not getting through. Harold indicated that he had been part of the search team for several days, but stopped because he did not feel fit and had to work. No doubt he wanted things to be different. If he could rewind time, he would have taken Allison home that evening, but unfortunately, nothing can be changed. On August 18, 2021, the court sentenced Nelson Sanchez Urania to 18 years in prison for taking the life of Allison Bonilla. He could have received twice the sentence, but the judge pointed out that there was no evidence to confirm that Urania knew about the path and time of Allison's return home and that he planned to attack her. Moreover, due to the condition of Allison's remains, there was no evidence that Urania had forced her into intimacy. But this is not the end of the story. Allison's family was very disappointed with the verdict. In their opinion, this was not a fair punishment. In 2022, the family's lawyer filed an appeal. The court overturned Urania's sentence and scheduled a new trial. On September 28, 2023, the court sentenced Nelson Sanchez Urania to 35 years in prison. Allison's family's lawyer pointed out that Urania acted wildly, cowardly, and inhumanly, and took advantage of the victim and her loved one's trust. According to the court, Urania's actions were premeditated. Allison had known Urania for several years, so he took advantage of this to commit a crime. Urania showed no remorse, and the criminal court took this into account. Despite feeling pain and anger, the family was happy with the new verdict, which finally closed this chapter of their lives, ending this nightmare that lasted more than 3 years. Allison's family placed a cross and laid flowers where she was found. They made for her something like a small altar with her photo and a statue of the Virgin Mary. The Allison Bonilla case has had a strong impact on Costa Rican media and social networks, even sparking several marches in memory of the young woman and other women who had previously suffered under similar circumstances, such as Maria Luisa Cedeno and Luani Salazar. A link to the story of Maria Luisa Cedeno should now appear on your screens. In today's deep dive, we peel back the layers of one of the UK's most calculated serial killers, a man who sought fame through the fear he instilled. We'll uncover the story of how he executed his plan with chilling precision and overshadowed a bustling city's celebratory spirit by a series of gruesome crimes. To understand the mind behind the moniker the Gay Slayer, we must delve into the past of Colin Ireland. Born in 1954 in Dartford, Kent, Ireland's early life was marked by turbulence, upheaval, and poverty. His childhood, spent in an unsettled home, was the first chapter in a life marked by discontent and detachment. Raised by a single mother, Ireland's formative years were a carousel of different men entering and leaving his life. This instability laid the groundwork for a personality that craved control, a trait that would later manifest in the most sinister ways. His parents were unmarried 17-year-olds. His father left soon after his birth, and Ireland didn't know his identity. Due to his mother's money problems, they had to move a number of times. In spite of all the hardships, Ireland had a close relationship with his mother and remembered her as affectionate and benevolent. Ireland said that as a child, he was a thin, lanky little runt, always getting the worst of it from schoolyard bullies. This made Ireland frequently miss school. As a result, he didn't get a proper education and became sad and withdrawn, choosing his few friends among the most unthreatening kids. As a teenager, Ireland found himself entangled with the law. His crimes, though initially petty, hinted at a deeper struggle within, a struggle for identity and a desperate need to assert his significance in a world where he felt invisible. Constantly in trouble of his own making, Ireland was sent to borstals and prisons for theft, robbery, blackmail, and burglary. He ran away to London at 16 and hung out in an amusement arcade with a bad reputation where young boys were targeted by pedophiles. Ireland was approached by some of them. Besides, one of his jobs was a bouncer on a gay club. That's where his understanding of gay subcultures came from. As Ireland himself described the 70s, I was entering what I call the lost period, common to those who suffer from psychopathy. In between custodial periods, a lot of the 70s were a blur. I spent my time detached and wondering. In 1982, Ireland married Virginia Zammit, who was confined to a wheelchair. His colleague witnessed a pleasant family life when he visited them. They divorced 5 years later after Ireland's adultery. In 1989, he married Janet Young. He was abusive and after 4 months left his wife abruptly when she was away for the weekend, stealing over £10,000 from her account and leaving her completely broke. He moved to Southend-on-Sea, Essex, roughly 60 kilometers east of London, and lived in a hostel there. Later, he moved to his own flat. There, in this flat, Ireland decided to become a serial killer as his New Year's resolution. Drifting through adulthood, Ireland's life was a patchwork of odd jobs and fleeting relationships. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, there was a growing fascination with infamy and a desire to etch his name into criminal history. Ireland immersed himself in the dark world of serial killers. He studied them, not with a sense of horror, but with an analytical eye. What made them tick? How did they elude capture? These were the questions that consumed him. He spent many hours reading about serial killers and learning about geographic profiling, hence deciding to commit his murders far away from his home. A killer usually commits crimes in a certain radius of about 7 miles from his home. That's why Ireland chose London for his crime scene. He also planned to have at least 5 victims, because he had read that a person needs to have such body count to qualify as a serial killer. The year 1993 witnessed a terrifying series of crimes that shook the core of London's LGBTQ+ community. Colin Ireland, a man whose unassuming demeanor masked a sinister agenda, embarked on a calculated campaign of terror, meticulously planning and executing a series of murders with chilling precision. Ireland's hunting ground was the vibrant gay scene of London. He frequented the Coleherne Club, a known gay bar, seeking out his potential victims. Here, amid the pulsing music and crowded dance floor, Ireland would select and study his targets, plotting their fates with cold detachment. Ireland sought men who liked the passive role in S&M, so he could easily restrain them as they believed it was a sexual game. Members of the pub would wear color-coded handkerchiefs to indicate their sexual proclivities. Ireland was posing as a dominant partner. His first victim, Peter Walker, was a 45-year-old choreographer. Ireland met Walker at the Coleherne, and what started as a night of perceived intimacy quickly turned into a nightmare. Walker's body was discovered in his apartment, revealing the horror of Ireland's actions. Bound, gagged, and suffocated by a plastic bag placed over his head, Walker's death was just the beginning of Ireland's gruesome spree. Ireland placed 2 teddy bears in a sexual position on Walker's body and burned some of his pubic hair so he could smell it. While searching the flat, he discovered that Walker was HIV positive. Enraged, Ireland stuffed a condom into Walker's mouth and another one into his nostril. Each crime scene told a story of meticulous planning and ruthless execution. He carried a murder kit, a rope, handcuffs, and a change of clothing. Ireland left little evidence behind, confounding the police and instilling a growing sense of fear within the community. He was methodical, ensuring each scene was thoroughly cleaned, removing any traces that could lead back to him. He also stayed in the flat till morning to avoid suspicion from leaving in the middle of the night. To describe the nights after his murders, Ireland said, "I think that affected me mentally to quite a degree, sitting with his body for 5 to 6 hours, watching him gradually get blotches, go cold. It wasn't something that I could cope with, to be honest." Ireland disposed of all the things he touched by throwing them out of a train window on his way back to Southend. When the police discovered the body, they assumed it was the result of a sexual game gone wrong. 2 months later, Ireland returned to the pub where he met 37-year-old librarian Christopher Dunn, who invited Ireland to his flat. Ireland tied, handcuffed, then beat and tortured his helpless victim before suffocating him by stuffing pieces of cloth into his mouth. After murdering him, Ireland used Dunn's PIN and bank card to withdraw $200 from his account. The police assumed it was an accident as a result of a sex game and didn't link his death to Walker's. Ireland was getting more and more confident as his New Year's resolution was coming together. Ireland met 35-year-old businessman Perry Bradley III at the Coleherne pub. He was the son of Texas Democratic Party fundraiser Perry Bradley Jr. In his Kensington flat, Bradley refused to be tied, but Ireland told him that he couldn't perform sexually without it. Bradley reluctantly agreed, and then Ireland told him that he was a thief and he just wanted his money and PIN. After Bradley gave Ireland his PIN, Ireland told him that he should try to fall asleep, as he wouldn't leave his flat till morning. Bradley did fall asleep, and Ireland realized that Bradley could identify him and strangled him. Then he placed a doll on top of the dead man's body. The heinous crimes of Colin Ireland not only sent shockwaves through the communities he targeted, but also captured the relentless gaze of the media. The press dubbed him the Gay Slayer, a moniker that sensationalized his horrific acts and underscored the homophobic undercurrents of the time. Within 3 days, on June 7th, Ireland was back at the Coleherne. He met 33-year-old Andrew Collier, a housing warden, and went to his home. Again, Ireland handcuffed and tied his victim to the bed, demanding his bank details. After killing Collier's cat, Ireland strangled Collier. He placed a condom on Collier's penis and fastened the dead cat's mouth over it, and put the cat's tail into Collier's mouth. On June 15th, Ireland met Maltese chef Emanuele Spiteri. Aged 41, he cuffed, bound, and strangled his victim, then stayed in his flat watching TV and eating Spiteri's food. After cleaning the scene, Ireland set fire to the flat, but it only caused minor damage. As the body count rose, so did the alarm. The gay community, already marginalized, now found itself in the grip of a predator who walked among them, unseen, unknown, and deadly. But what was the motive behind these abhorrent acts? Was it a deep-seated animosity towards the gay community, or something more cold and calculated? And what were the critical mistakes Ireland made, and how did they lead to his capture? As the death toll rose, London's Metropolitan Police found themselves grappling with a cunning predator. The investigation into Colin Ireland's crimes was a race against time, a complex puzzle that demanded not just diligence, but innovation in the face of a killer who seemed always one step ahead. Initially, the investigation faced significant challenges. Ireland's careful planning and meticulous cleanup at each crime scene left frustratingly few clues. The killer's methodical approach in disguising his identity and movements compounded the difficulty, turning the investigation into a labyrinthine task. Detectives were confronted with a disturbing pattern. All victims were men from the gay community, their bodies discovered in their own homes, a sign of trust, brutally exploited. This realization led to a focused investigation in London's gay scene, particularly around the Coleherne pub where Ireland hunted for his victims. The breakthrough came from meticulous police work and a stroke of luck. A forgotten fingerprint at a crime scene, a chance capture on one of London's first CCTV cameras. These were the pivotal moments that began to unravel Ireland's web of deceit. When Ireland was in Andrew Collier's flat, they heard a noise outside and came up to the window. Ireland gripped a horizontal metal bar across the window and forgot to wipe it off. The police then found these fingerprints. And finally, Ireland was captured on CCTV. Some witnesses said Spiteri left Coleherne with a man. Then police traced his route home. His train journey went through Charing Cross Station, fitted with one of London's first CCTV cameras. Each piece of evidence was a precious key, unlocking parts of a puzzle that Ireland thought he had so carefully hidden. But what was it that finally led to Ireland's downfall? How did the police connect the dots in a case that seemed to defy resolution? The relentless pursuit of justice in the Colin Ireland case turned a crucial corner with a single, seemingly innocuous phone call. Ireland, emboldened by his actions, made a call to the police, taunting them about his crimes. The day after Peter Walker's murder, having heard no news reports of his crime, he anonymously called the Samaritans and the Sun, telling them that he had murdered Walker and locked his dogs in another room. Later, the police received a call from Dunn's killer taunting them because they had failed to link his death to Walker's. In his next anonymous call to the police, he asked, "Are you still interested in the death of Peter Walker? Why have you stopped the investigation? Doesn't the death of a homosexual man mean anything? I will do another. I have always dreamed of doing the perfect murder." After Collier's death, Ireland called Kensington police and said that he had killed 4 men and they had to stop him. He told the police that he had read many books on serial killers and said, "If you don't stop me, it will be one a week." He told the police that he had studied the FBI manual, that is, Whoever Fights Monsters, by ex-FBI agent and serial killer specialist Robert Ressler. "I have got the book," he said. "I know how many you have to do." Ireland later said that the TV crime series, The Bill, had also given him many of his ideas and police evasion methods. Forensic psychologist Professor Michael Brooks said, "Just because you read books about serial killers doesn't mean you have any interest in becoming a serial killer yourself. But if that is your motive, then actually reading books can give you an awareness of the ways in which serial killers have acted in the past." Armed with this new evidence, the police intensified their efforts. A suspect started to take shape from the shadows. It was a breakthrough moment in the investigation, a lead that they desperately needed. On 19th of July, 1993, Ireland went to his solicitor. He said that he was on the CCTV, but that he had not killed Spiteri. He went to his flat for sex, but there was another man. He didn't want a threesome and left. The investigation took a dramatic turn as law enforcement officers matched Ireland's fingerprint to the Collier crime scene. His arrest was a moment of triumph mixed with stark horror as the extent of his crimes came to light. Ireland's overconfidence combined with advanced police work and the critical clues helped bring the killer to justice. The capture of Colin Ireland was more than just the conclusion of a manhunt. It was a moment that brought some semblance of closure to the victims' families and a community shaken by fear. It also opened up vital conversations about the safety of marginalized groups. The trial of Colin Ireland was set to be a gripping chapter in British legal history, a case built on a foundation of solid evidence. Ireland, facing overwhelming evidence, made a decision that stunned the courtroom. He confessed to his crimes, detailing them with a cold detachment that sent shivers down the spines of all present. His confession was not just an admission of guilt, but a hair-raising narrative of his calculated and brutal actions. Ironically, pleading guilty to all his murders and confessing, Ireland avoided the publicity he so deeply craved. The heart of the trial, however, lay in the stories of the victims. Their lives, tragically lost, remind us of the human cost of hate and prejudice. Were these 5 murders Ireland's only crimes? Or did he kill others? Serial killers often withhold some of their murders from the police to gain a sense of control over them, even in prison. In January 1993, soon after Ireland's resolution, the police found a dead gay man in his home in Soho. They believed this might have been done by Ireland. However, the gay slayer never claimed this crime. Along with his other victims, a perilous shadow loomed over Hollywood star Tom Cruise. In a chilling twist of fate, Cruise, then at the height of his career and married to Nicole Kidman, narrowly escaped a potentially fatal encounter. According to statements and police files that later surfaced, Ireland had spotted Cruise in a London bar in 1993. Driven by a perilous and misguided belief, Ireland falsely assumed Cruise to be gay and plotted to make him one of his victims. The killer's sinister plan was unexpectedly thwarted. Cruise, possibly sensing something amiss or merely coincidental in his timing, left the bar abruptly, eluding Ireland's grasp. Ireland's conviction was a foregone conclusion, but the sentencing phase was a crucial moment. The judge, in a powerful address, condemned Ireland's actions, emphasizing the gravity and premeditated nature of the crimes. The judge called Ireland exceptionally frightening and dangerous. He said to him, "To take one human life is an outrage. To take 5 is carnage. In my view, it is absolutely clear you should never be released." Ireland was sentenced to 5 counts of life imprisonment for the murders. But the story does not end with Ireland's conviction. There are unconfirmed rumors that Ireland strangled his cellmate, a convicted child killer, in Wakefield Prison, Yorkshire. After that, he was transferred to maximum security lodgings at Whitemoor Prison, Cambridgeshire, into a private cell of his own. His pattern of selecting victims, meticulous planning, and the psychological games played with law enforcement are now studied in criminal psychology courses worldwide. Moreover, the investigation into Ireland's crimes highlighted the importance of community involvement in criminal cases. The breakthroughs in this case were a result of not just police work, but also the cooperation of the community, which had been terrorized by his actions. Ireland's case became a catalyst for discussions about homophobia and hate crimes. It highlighted the urgent need for societal change, not just in policy, but in everyday attitudes and understanding. Ireland died on 21 February 2012 of pulmonary fibrosis and a fractured hip he had suffered earlier. Former prison governor Vanessa Frake, who had crossed paths with numerous hardened criminals, called Ireland the most frightening prisoner she has ever come across. She said, "I don't know what it was about him. He just emanated evil." He was proud of what he did, same as many other serial killers. What drives a man to commit such calculated and brutal acts of violence? To understand Ireland's psyche, we delve into the complex labyrinth of his mind, piecing together a profile that is as disturbing as it is intriguing. Experts who have studied Ireland's case point to a combination of factors. His troubled childhood, marked by instability and lack of a father figure, may have sown the seeds of his later behavior, but it was his deep-seated desire for recognition, a craving to leave a mark on the world that propelled him into the abyss of serial killing. Ireland's methodical approach to his crimes suggests a high level of intelligence and planning. He studied serial killers, not with repulsion, but with a scholar's interest. He learned from their mistakes, aiming not just to evade capture, but to master the art of killing. Ireland's methodical approach to his crimes offers a chilling glimpse into the mindset of a serial killer. His need for control and recognition, coupled with his ability to blend into society, challenges our understanding of criminal behavior. Forensic psychologists theorize that Ireland's choice of victims from the gay community was strategic rather than personal. He saw them as easy targets, vulnerable due to societal marginalization. This choice reflects not just a cold-blooded strategy, but a chilling indifference to human life. He said about how he chose his victims, "I think it's been something that's been triggered in me some time before. I felt if I was approached, it was likely that I would kill. I thought to myself, if I wasn't approached, something wouldn't have happened. I would have gone on my way and nothing would have happened. Forensic psychologist Professor Michael Brooks explained, what he does is he reduces the chance of choosing an inappropriate victim or somebody who wasn't going to respond by not selecting those who didn't approach him. Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of Ireland's psychology is his lack of remorse. His confessions were devoid of emotion, his recounting of the crimes clinical. This detachment points to a possible psychopathic personality, where empathy and conscience are alarmingly absent. Detective Inspector Martin Finnegan said, he was very factual about his acts, as if he was describing someone else's activities. Absolutely no compassion at all. I didn't detect much hatred. It was just matter of fact, like, I went down the shops and bought this, went into the flat and killed him. In most cases, the murderers who kill gay people are gay themselves, and those blatantly homophobic are often secretly gay. Was it really a plausible excuse for Ireland to give in to his secret emotions? Ireland compared the buzz of his first kill to that of losing his virginity. Maybe these hidden feelings brought this simile to his mind. Was Ireland just dishonest with himself and others, trying to hide what he really couldn't control? Ireland said he was heterosexual and didn't touch or have sex with the men he killed. However, it's difficult to imagine that at least 5 people invited him to his flat for sex, undressed, and let Ireland tie them without even a single kiss. Can a person even decide to become a serial killer as a career just for the sake of it without any ulterior motives? And choose the specifics of his crimes by pure logic? Or is it something deeper? Or was theft the real reason of Ireland's crimes, and murdering his victims was a calculated move to prevent them from identifying him later? There's inconsistency in Ireland's story about the murder of Perry Bradley. He said that he had promised Bradley to leave him alive, but then it occurred to him that Bradley could identify him. This narrative strongly contradicts with his whole intention of choosing his victims for murder to gain fame from becoming a serial killer. Was Ireland just exploiting homophobic moods in the society to mask the mercenary nature of his crimes, hoping that it will win him sympathy of the public and reduce the term of his imprisonment? Or was there more than one reason, perhaps all of them combined? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Share your perspectives and let me know what other cases you'd like me to explore. Until next time.